Chapter 451. Let's go. Hiss hiss hiss. Huyanabwa, the Lung sisters, and the others rushed out of the cultivation room as fast as they could. They directly raised their speed to the peak and flew out. Even though they couldn't fly in Emerald Smoke City, they were all first-class geniuses. In addition, they had all entered the legendary Berserk Demon Realm. And after half a year of cultivation, they had all stepped into the creation realm. How fast could they be? At least in Emerald Smoke City, they were definitely super awesome existences. This was especially so for the Lung sisters who had telepathy. They already had an absolute advantage in speed. Now that the two of them had merged into one, even Huyanabwa and the others were slightly inferior. Brother Hao. From afar, the beautiful sisters' eyes locked onto Chen Hao, who was the only dazzling figure in the crowd. They hadn't seen each other for more than 9 months since they parted ways in Great Yin City. At this moment, Chen Hao seemed even more spirited and handsome, like a crane in a flock of chickens, perhaps because of the advancement of his realm. Huan Huan Lei. Looking at the two beautiful sisters who suddenly stopped in front of him, their expressions both excited and shy, Chen Hao felt that his eyes were very bright after experiencing 7 months of darkness. He couldn't help but reach out and pull the two sisters into his embrace, hugging them tightly. Only then did he let go of their fragrant and delicate bodies. Boss, you finally came out. Boss. Huyanabwa, Meng Xiao, First King, Jing Tiangang, Bailey Lianqing, Zhang Rongrong, Gao Dazhuang, and Lin Hao all came in front of Chen Hao. When Chen Hao saw the gazes of the people around him, he waved his hand and released a barrier seal. Not bad. All of you have reached the blessed realm. Where are Jiang Hai and Huang Wenxiu? Chen Hao's lips curled into a smile as he swept his gaze over the crowd. The two of them entered the eastern continent with the sisters-in-law as Palace Master Yun Wei of the Limitless Immortal Palace. Boss, when did you come out? Huyan Aobo stared at Chen Hao with a face full of surprise. At that moment, Chen Hao's aura was that of a manifestation realm martial artist. Even though Chen Hao had restrained his aura by a lot, he knew that his current boss was definitely an extremely powerful existence. After all of them knew that Chen Hao had not returned from the ruins 4 months ago. Furthermore, there was a high possibility that he had killed 4 manifestation realm martial artists at the peak of the late stage when he was in the ruins. I just came out. How's Xiao Shui and the others? Any news? Chen Hao asked. No. 2 months ago, when we arrived here together, they had already entered the eastern continent. Right now, no one is able to send out any information regarding the eastern continent's 3 paths. Even if the direct descendants of the eastern continent returned, no one has come out. We have no way of obtaining any information. That's right. No matter if it's the Devil Dao, the Immortal Dao, or the Demon Dao, those who went in to investigate did not come out. The situation might be more serious. Now the cultivators gathered here are basically from the eastern continent. It's just that they don't know what's going on and don't dare to return. Some people speculate that it's very likely that a war between the Immortal Dao, the Devil Dao, and the Demon Dao has already broken out in the eastern continent. Unfortunately, we can't help, Lin Hao said. Hearing their words, Chen Hao frowned slightly. When we came here, we met 40 elites at the peak of the late stage of the blessed realm sent by the Limitless Demon Palace. A few of them were with Soul Fighter. In the 2 months before we came here, they had been looking for a chance to attack us. Fortunately, Aunt Shue's perception was extremely strong, and we didn't give them any chance. We even killed 2 of them. Boss you, are you going back? Yes. Don't wait here anymore. All of you return to the central continent, and listen to the arrangements of the 2 immortal supremes. If a war between the Immortal Dao, the Devil Dao, and the Demon Dao really breaks out, we don't know when we'll be able to come out. Don't waste time here. This is an order, Chen Hao said coldly when he saw the expressions on everyone's faces. Brother Hao. The 2 beautiful sisters held tightly onto Chen Hao's arm at the same time. Don't worry. I've prepared these things for you. Unless you're in a life or death situation, no one can use them. These are all refined according to your characteristics. They're middle-grade spirit artifact sets, but their functions are not inferior to high-grade spirit artifacts. Hiss hiss hiss. As Chen Hao spoke, The storage rings that he had prepared before entering the ruins were placed in front of the beautiful sisters and the others. Huyan Aobua and the others were stunned. Middle-grade spirit artifact sets. What kind of concept was that? They suspected that they had misheard, but they knew that it was definitely true. After all, Chunhao would never give them a middle-grade spirit artifact. The difference of one word was like heaven and earth. Aobua, take these things. If you lack primal crystals or want to buy something, just auction it off. It'll be enough for you to use for a long time. Also, members of the Proud Heavens sect, you can start developing. Just keep a close eye on it. If it's worth your effort, nurture it with all your might. Our reliance on the Wuxia Immortal Palace is only temporary. Do you understand what I mean? Hearing Chunhao's words, everyone's expressions changed slightly. Huyan Aobua, the first king, and the other men's eyes lit up, and they transmitted their voices to each other. Understood. That's good. I'm going. After Chunhao finished speaking, he removed the barrier seal and gently grasped the beautiful sister's tender hands. Under everyone's gaze, he walked into the crowd and headed straight for the teleportation hall. Chunhao. Isn't that Chunhao from the star-picking sect? Heavens. He's actually reached the creation realm. No wonder he's the top cultivator among the younger generation of the immortal Dao in the eastern mainland. When Chunhao stepped into the teleportation hall, countless cultivators focused their attention on Chunhao. At this moment, the cultivators who could be here were basically cultivators from the 3 Daos of the eastern mainland, and most of them were at the primordial soul or creation realm. However, after learning about the current situation in the eastern mainland, not many dared to enter. Chunhao. At this moment, a figure in the crowd exclaimed in surprise when he saw Chunhao. Chunhao found the name vaguely familiar, and could not help but turn around to take a look. It was Lone Star from the Floating Mist sect. He's also reached the peak of the early stage creation realm? Chunhao was a little surprised. Although Lone Star was a rare genius in the eastern mainland, compared to him, there was still a huge gap between them. However, after not seeing him for several years, Lone Star's speed of advancement was actually not inferior to Chunhao's. Moreover, Chunhao's sharp senses told him that Lone Star's aura was definitely not something an ordinary early-stage creation realm expert could compare to. He was not weaker than Lin Hao. It's been a long time. Are you going back to the eastern mainland? Lone Star's eyes shone brightly, and he seemed to have changed his quiet personality. He actually stepped out of the crowd and quickly arrived in front of Chunhao. Lone Star. The #1 genius of the Floating Mist sect, Lone Star. Amazing, he's also reached the peak of the early stage creation realm. When Gu Xing was exposed in front of everyone, there were people who immediately recognized him. Chunhao felt the fighting spirit in Lone Star's eyes, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly as he said with a smile, "Why, you don't dare to go back?" Of course, he knew where Lone Star's fighting spirit came from. Any genius, as long as they had the chance, would climb back up from where they fell. He had once lost to Chunhao, and now that they met again, and his realm was slightly higher than Chunhao's, he naturally wanted to fight to his heart's content with Chunhao. It's not that I don't dare to. It's just that there's nothing in the eastern mainland that I'm worried about. Lone Star's expression did not change as he spoke in a low voice. Oh. As a disciple of the Floating Mist sect, aren't you worried about the safety of the Floating Mist sect? I've already repaid their kindness by earning kismet for them. Some people are not worthy of respect, and are not worth risking your life for. What the sect leader did to you was not my intention, and it has nothing to do with me. I just want to fight you fair and square. Can I? Lone Star went straight to the point. I'm sorry, I don't have time to waste. Besides, you still need to work hard. Those are all my underlings. If you can win against any one of them, I'll fight you when I come out. Chunhao said with a smile. As he spoke, he pointed at Huyan Aobua and the rest who were staring at him, and at the same time, he sent a few words to them. Gu Xing faintly furrowed his eyebrows, as if he was extremely displeased with Chunhao's disdain. However, when he saw Huyan Aobua and the rest, his expression changed slightly. Soon after, he took a deep breath and said, "All right, when you come out, you will definitely fight me." I hope so. Chunhao's figure flashed, and he walked in front of the 12 experts who were guarding the teleportation portal. These 12 people were all in the human immortal realm, and they were from the immortal path, demon path, and demon path. Obviously, these were the experts sent by the 3 great palaces. Chun Hao walked directly in front of the 4 people from the immortal path, took out his identification card, and said, "I'm a disciple of the immortal path of the Eastern continent. Are you sure you want to go back?" One of the old men took Chun Hao's identification card and said after glancing at it. "I'm sure," Chun Hao said in a low voice. "Good job," the old man praised. Then, he took Chun Hao's identification card and turned to look at the people from the demon path and demon path, and said, "Do you want to check? He's just in the beginning stage of the creation realm. What's there to check? If a great battle breaks out, you'll just be courting death. Go. Even if you die, your people will die first," the old man from the immortal path said disdainfully. Then he looked at Chun Hao and said, "Go. You've reached the creation realm at such a young age, don't be rash. If a great battle breaks out, the ones who will lead the battle will be the peak of the late-stage creation realm and the half-step human immortal realm. The 3 realms are in chaos now, and we can't predict where you'll be teleported to. Be careful and good luck." "Thank you for the reminder, Senior," Chun Hao said apologetically, and then stepped into the teleportation portal not far away. Rays of dazzling light flashed, and Chun Hao disappeared from the portal. Hiss. In the Eastern continent, a milky white door of light suddenly appeared in the void above a stretch of mountain peaks. The door of light disappeared, and a figure landed on a mountain peak as fast as lightning. If you like this work, you're welcome to vote for me at Chidian.com. Chapter 452. The Demon Realm? The Middle Continent's 3 realms were not divided. The auras of the immortal, demon, and demon realms would only appear in places like the Wuxia Immortal Palace. However, the Eastern Continent's 3 realms were clearly separated. At this moment, the area where Chun Hao appeared was filled with dense demonic qi for thousands of miles. However, the auras of the immortal and demon realms were also contained within, although they were relatively weaker. It seems that the 3 realms are truly in chaos. This should be the demon realm's territory, but the immortal and demon qi are mixed in as well. This must be caused by the collapse of the barrier seal between the 3 realms. Chun Hao restrained his aura and sensed the situation within a radius of nearly 10,000 miles. No wonder not many cultivators dare to come back. If it were other immortal Dao disciples, they would have been killed here before they could even return to their sects. However, it doesn't matter to me. The Heart Sutra that merged with all things in the world was one of the reasons. Secondly, he had Itoda, a pure demon Dao cultivator. Back then, Itoda had only been at the nascent soul stage, but now, under the old god's guidance, the strength of his soul had reached the half-step creation stage. Would it not be easy to disguise as a demon Dao cultivator? However, Chun Hao did not need to do that at all. Sensing the auras of the dozen or so demon Dao cultivators rushing over, Chun Hao's lips curled into a wicked smile. Hiss, there were a total of 14 figures, each of their auras above the mid-stage creation stage. One of them was even at the peak of the late-stage creation stage. Their mission was to kill the non-demon Dao cultivators who had been transported from the outside world. With the 3 realms in chaos, Emerald Smoke City's transportation formation could be used to accurately select a city, but now that it had been destroyed, it would depend on one's luck as to which realm they would be transported to. However, no matter which realm they were in, they would be in the vicinity of the original transportation formation that led to Emerald Smoke City, and would not be more than 3,000 miles away. You dare come back when you're only at the early stage creation stage? Ha ha ha. Kid, tell us your name. Which immortal Dao sect are you from? If it's the Origin Gate, Heavenly Sword sect, or Floating Mist sect, we can guarantee your safety. If it's a large sect like the Ling Tian sect, as long as your sect is willing to pay, we can consider letting you redeem your freedom. Haha. This kid has already reached the blessed realm at such a young age. He must be a super genius from a large sect, right? I should be able to make a fortune. Hee hee. In an instant, the 14 of them surrounded Chun Hao. Each and every one of them looked at Chun Hao as if they were looking at a fat sheep waiting to be slaughtered. Once the great war of the three realms of immortals, demons, and demons broke out in the early stages of the manifestation stage, their usefulness would be very limited. Those in the initial stage of the blessed realm only had the right to participate. As for young disciples with potential like Chen Hao, they were usually protected by the sect and were not allowed to participate in the battle. The main force participating in the battle were the sect's grand elders, sect leaders, elders, and other experts who had stepped into the blessed realm. On the other hand, the three dimensions were afraid that the other side would kill their young disciples. So the three dimensions agreed that if their young disciples appeared near the teleportation formation, then they couldn't kill them, and they would use origin crystals, magic treasures, precious spirit herbs, and so on and so forth to redeem them. Of course, the prerequisite was that the sect the young disciple belonged to was willing to pay and could afford it. Otherwise, there would only be one outcome: death. Our luck is not bad. It's just our turn, and we've already met a valuable one. Kid, are you scared out of your wits? Why don't you tell us your name? The old man at the peak of the mastery stage said as he stared at Chen Hao with a smug and cold gaze. Ah! Bang! To everyone's surprise, Chen Hao suddenly shrieked in fright, as if he was about to tear the space apart. Trying to run? Hiss hiss hiss. The 14 people who surrounded Chen Hao from several thousand feet away instantly charged at Chen Hao. At the same time, they released an extremely powerful sealing energy from afar. It was not that they had never seen such a scene before. If they allowed Chen Hao to escape by tearing space apart right under their noses, wouldn't they be in trouble? Faced with an oppressive force that was as vast as the mountains and seas, the space seemed to be sealed. When he saw that the crowd was only 3,000 feet away from him, Chen Hao, who originally seemed to be in a panic, had two extremely sharp killing intent shining in his eyes. Clang. Chi 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 chi. Puff 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 puff. Boom 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 boom. He unsheathed his sword, attacked, and unleashed his ultimate moves in one go. His speed was so fast that it completely exceeded the 14 people's expectations. 13 of them did not even have time to cry out in alarm before they felt a chill in their hearts. Soon after, their heads swelled, and they lost consciousness. The only person at the peak of the mastery stage widened his eyes in extreme horror. He wanted to call for help, wanted to cry out in alarm, but he was shocked to discover that a palm that contained destructive energy had already pressed down on his head. He believed that as long as he made any movement, he would definitely be like the 13 companions in front of him, and his head would explode like a watermelon. He did not understand why his body had uncontrollably appeared in front of the youth in front of him. He also did not understand how the youth had managed to kill the other 13 people in one move, and even control him. If you don't want to die, behave yourself. With a wave of his hand, he collected the storage rings of the 14 people and destroyed the corpses. Chen Hao released a barrier that enveloped him and the old man. Tell me, what's the current situation of the immortal Dao, devil Dao, and demon Dao? If you spout nonsense, I'll destroy your body and soul. Chen Hao's eyes emitted a soul-stirring pressure as he stared at the old man and said, I'll talk, don't kill me. The old man was scared silly. How was this the early stage of the mastery stage? This was clearly the ability of a half-step human immortal. More than 10 minutes later, the old man's pupils suddenly shrank and widened. He stared straight at Chen Hao with disbelief. Don't look at me like that. What credibility do I have with my enemies? Besides, I didn't say that I wouldn't kill you. Chen Hao clapped his hands and kept the old man's storage ring. Although his wealth was already immeasurable, he still had to collect the spoils of war. How weak. They're all at the peak of the mastery stage of the creation stage, but the people from the limitless celestial palace can fight against 10 of them. Chen Hao shrugged with a smug look on his face. This was his first battle after stepping out of the ruin. If he had not comprehended the 1000 transformation mystic technique, it would have taken him a lot of effort to kill these people. However, these creation stage cultivators with low aptitudes were like ants in front of him. They could not even withstand a single blow. However, the current situation is a little bad. Chen Hao had already learned about the current situation in the Eastern continent from the old man. In the Eastern continent, the immortal Dao was the weakest among the 3 Daos. It only occupied 1/5 of the territory. Whether it was the number of sects or the number of experts, it was far inferior to the Devil Dao and Demon Dao, especially the Devil Dao. This time, because the Origin sect had betrayed their camp and colluded with the Devil Dao, they had instigated the Sky Sword sect and the Floating Mist sect, who were also punished to betray them. It was equivalent to taking in the 3 strongest forces of the 10 immortal Dao sects. Other than the Ling Tian sect, what else did the immortal Dao have? How could the Demon Dao in the Eastern continent stand by and watch the conflict between the immortal Dao and the Devil Dao? The Demon Dao alone could not contend against the Devil Dao. Even if they joined forces with the immortal Dao, they could only achieve a draw. Therefore, the Demon Dao chose to join forces with the Devil Dao to divide the weakest immortal Dao. In this way, they would be able to obtain considerable benefits with the least amount of sacrifices. This directly caused the immortal Dao to fall into a state of being besieged on all sides. Fortunately, even so, the Devil Dao and Demon Dao did not dare to rashly start a war. After all, although the immortal Dao was at a complete disadvantage in terms of the number of experts, they would still suffer great losses if a real war were to break out. Moreover, this was also something that the 3 great palaces of the boundless continent would not allow unless it was a last resort. The forces of the 3 forces are gathered in the 3 realms galaxy, which is 13 million miles away from here. If I were to fly there, it would take about 20 hours. What a waste! Chen Hao said in his mind. Ito-ta, I'll leave it to you. Yes, master. Hiss. Chen Hao suddenly retracted his aura completely, and all his attention was retracted into his soul residence. Meanwhile, Ito-ta excitedly took control of Chen Hao's body. Phew. So powerful, so powerful. Ha. Master, your physical body is really too good. Ito-ta said excitedly as he sensed the surging power in Chen Hao's body. Stop talking nonsense. Let's hurry up and go to the nearest city, which is about 100,000 miles from here. When the time comes, just teleport there directly. Okay. Eastern continent, 3 realms galaxy. 3 long rivers that were about 100 miles wide and endlessly long, exuding boundless mysteries intersected at one place. The rolling water and raging waves surged to the sky, dividing the land into 3 parts. Countless experts from the immortal Dao, Demon Dao, and Devil Dao had gathered in their own territories. In their territories near the Milky Way of the 3 realms, there were rows of huge palaces. Between the palaces and the endless Milky Way, there were array diagrams that were parallel to the Milky Way. Unfortunately, the array diagrams were broken. In the Great Hall of the Immortal Dao, Faction Leader Xia, no matter what, you can't agree to it. Both of them are already stronger than us. Let alone 20. We can't even choose 5. This is obviously too much. Yeah, we have no chance of winning at all. So what? Are we going to start a war? Xia Lingfeng frowned, but there was no other way. In the entire hall, countless top figures of the various sects were all gloomy. Let's start a war then. At most, we'll fight to the death. If it's just 10 million miles of land, it's fine, but you still want my 4 sisters-in-law to destroy my boss's sect? Jiang Hai and Huang Wenxiu were among the 40 disciples sent by Limitless Immortal Palace. Although the 2 of them were only at the peak of the initial stage of Creation Realm, they were 2 of the 4 people with the highest prestige among the 40 disciples of Limitless Immortal Palace. The other 2 were 2 disciples with high potential from Yunwei Palace. That's right. If they start a war, we can help. If we agree to it, we can't help. And you have no chance of winning. Faction Leader Xia, the decision is yours. Junior Sister Yu is your granddaughter. Junior Sister Xiaowu and Junior Sister Xiaoyan are both direct disciples of Yunwei Palace's Palace Master, and their futures are limitless. Are you willing to let them be humiliated? The youth with the highest prestige in Yunwei Palace stared at Xia Lingfeng and asked. Yunwei Palace was in charge of the Eastern Continent's immortal Dao. Apart from Jiang Hai and Huang Wenxiu, the others were all disciples of Yunwei Palace. Of course, they knew the importance of Xia Yuyu and the other 2 to senior immortal Yunwei. Chapter 453. Everyone, you are disciples of the Immortal Palace. Forgive me for being blunt, but if a war breaks out, can the 40 of you defeat the 80 demonic and demon cultivators? The final outcome will be the extinction of the immortal Tao in the Eastern continent, divided by the demonic and demon cultivators. Blood will flow like rivers, and the people will be plunged into misery and suffering. All the cultivators in the Eastern continent will have no place to stay. I believe that even the immortal venerables will not agree to such an outcome. Moreover, have you seen how many immortal Tao sects in the Eastern continent are wavering? Even if we don't agree, how many sects will be willing to fight with us? Xiao Lingfeng's beard trembled as he spoke emotionally. Whether it was his granddaughter Xia Yuyu, Helian Wuzi, Tantai Lian, or Chen Shui, they were all true geniuses that had not appeared in the Eastern continent for thousands of years. How could he be willing to sacrifice them? However, the situation had already reached this point. If he did not agree, it would only be worse. Once the war broke out, would Xia Yuyu and the others be able to escape? Now, if he agreed to the battle between the demonic and demon cultivators, at least the Eastern continent would have a chance of survival. Grandfather, agree. If we lose, we can just commit suicide. I believe that they will repay us 100 times, 1,000 times, no matter who it is, no matter how strong they are. Xia Yuyu said firmly when she saw her grandfather's gaze. At this point, she could not drag out an ignoble existence. She understood how difficult it was for her grandfather to make such a decision. Who could stop the trend of the world? Sister-in-law. We have no choice. Yuyu is right. You only know that some of the 40 people from the Limitless Demon Palace are our enemies, but you don't know that the Yuan Gate, Floating Mist Sect, and Sky Sword Sect colluded with the demonic sects because of us and Chen Hao. No matter what, they will not let us go. This matter started because of us, so we will bear the responsibility. One day he will avenge us. Xia Yuyu said, then looked at Chen Shui, Helian Wuzi, and Tantai Lian. What do you think? There is no need to drag the others to their deaths. Just the 4 of us will do. 4 against 40, even if we die, we can kill more than 10 of them. Chen Shui said coldly. The others nodded. At this moment, other than the Pavilion Master and Grand Elder of the Myriad Pill Pavilion, no one knew that Chen Shui was Lung Yihan. He only knew that Chen Shui was an itinerant cultivator of the immortal Tao in the East Continent. She had already confirmed her relationship with Chen Hao. Good. Very good. Since the Star Seizing House is the first to bear the brunt of the attack, it doesn't matter. As long as Chen Hao is alive, the Star Seizing House will have hope. Isn't it just death? Clan Master Xia, agree to their demands. The Star Seizing Sect Master, Yuan Tairan, had originally been hesitating. However, after hearing what Xia Yuyu, Chen Shui and the others said, he was unable to continue to hesitate. No matter what he chose, the star-picking sect would be destroyed. Why not think about the countless sects and billions of living beings of the immortal Tao? Sect leader, what do you want to agree to? At this moment, a voice appeared in the hall without warning. The people present were either sect masters or supreme elders. There were also 40 true experts of the limitless immortal palace. However, when this voice resounded in everyone's ears, not a single person felt the slightest bit of aura. Who? Shock appeared on everyone's faces as they looked at the closed palace doors. Boss. Jiang Hai and Huang Wenxiu cried out in shock. Meanwhile, Chen Shui, Helian Wuzi, Xia Yuyu, and Tantai Lian rushed to the palace doors, their faces filled with boundless joy and excitement. Grandfather, it's Hao Hao. It's Hao Hao. Hurry and open the door. Xia Yuyu shouted as she ran. Xia Lingfeng, Yuan Tairan, and the 6 supreme elders of the Star Seizing Sect were first pleasantly surprised, but then their faces turned pale. They'd already heard about Chen Hao's situation from the 4 girls. At this moment, it would have been fine if Chen Hao hadn't returned. As long as Chen Hao was here, they believed that with his talent, Chen Hao would one day make the Demon Dao and Yao Dao pay with blood. But now their only hope had returned. What did that mean? They didn't believe that Chen Hao's return alone could change the outcome. That would be suicide. Creak. Rumble. Before Xiao Lingfeng could activate the restriction, the palace doors slowly opened, and Chen Hao's handsome figure appeared before everyone's eyes. The powerful restriction blockade actually existed in name only to Chen Hao. Creation Realm. When the 4 girls rushed halfway, they suddenly realized the same problem. Their faces, which were originally full of surprise, suddenly changed, and their footwork became heavy. They knew that Chen Hao hadn't stepped into the creation realm yet. But at this moment, the moment they saw Chen Hao, they were pleasantly surprised again. Enough. Chen Hao had stepped into the creation realm. What was not enough? Fortunately, I came back in time. In front of so many elders and with the 4 girls together, Chen Hao couldn't do anything intimate. He only looked at the 4 girls and said with a smile, "Boss. Haha. Creation realm, that's great. There won't be any problems now. Haha. Boss, you're finally out. Without you we were all bored to death." Jiang Hai and Huang Wenxiu, the last 2 guys to enter the sect, seemed to have been assimilated by Huyan Aobua, and the others after not seeing them for more than half a year. One by one, they ran excitedly to Chen Hao and said excitedly. The others stared at Chen Hao, not understanding why the 4 girls and Jiang Hai were so excited. He had obviously come back to die, so how could there be no problems? Was the creation realm very high? And he was only at the early stage of the creation realm. They believed that Chen Hao's combat power must be very strong, but could he alone turn the tide? This was not the Eastern Continent's immortal Dao sect exchange competition. The demon realm had long been scheming. There were 20 young disciples at the peak of the late stage of the creation realm. They said that they were the direct descendants of the Eastern Continent, but everyone knew that it was impossible. Close the door. Rumble. No one here is allowed to reveal any news of Chen Hao's return. Xia Lingfeng glanced at the hall and said in a low voice. After saying that, he looked at Chen Hao and said, "Why did you come back? Revenge is a dish best served cold. As long as you are outside, there is still hope for the immortal Dao. You. I have never liked revenge. Why don't you tell me the details?" Chen Hao's expression changed slightly, and the aura that he had been restraining was suddenly released, instantly enveloping the entire hall. At that moment, everyone felt like they could not stand steadily. A terrifying pressure and several types of sword Dao that made one's soul tremble appeared in everyone's heart at the same time. Even Chen Shui, Xiao Wu, and the others who knew Chen Hao the best widened their eyes in horror. "Chen Hao, you hid your cultivation level?" Yuan Tyran asked, tongue-tied. "You can say that. Sect Master, what were you talking about just now?" Chen Hao did not want to talk about this issue. Showing his aura was already the limit of what he could do, because Chen Hao could not be sure that there were no spies from the demon realm present. "Let me say it." Chen Shui took over and slowly told him the demon sect's conditions. Chen Hao had only learned the general situation from the demon sect cultivator, but at that moment, after hearing Chen Shui's words, his handsome face shone with a strong killing intent. "Sect Master Xia, Grandfather Xia, agree to them," Chen Hao said in a low voice. Originally, he had some conflict with Xia Lingfeng, so he addressed him as Sect Master Xia. But after considering Xia Yuyu's feelings, he changed the way he addressed him. "Are you sure? The 20 young disciples of the demon sect are definitely experts gathered by the limitless demon palace in the middle continent with a premeditated plan. Moreover, they came in before the 3 barriers completely collapsed. Among the young disciples here, only the 5 of you have reached the blessed realm. How can you compare? I know you are very strong, even stronger than me, but they are all super geniuses. And they are all at the peak of the late stage of the blessed realm. Even I can deal with 5 of them at most. Didn't you want to agree just now?" "Do you want to start a war?" Chen Hao said with a frown. "Yes, you have to agree. But I don't want you to show yourself. With your concealment skills, if no one knows that you have returned, you should be able to avoid this calamity. I said before, I don't like revenge. If we die together. And if we live together, we live together." Chen Hao said resolutely. "Grandfather, just agree. You don't have to care about how. Xia Yuyu said. "Sect Master Xia, just agree. Since my boss is here, he won't do as you say. Just wait for a good show." Huang Wenxiu also said. "All right. But don't say my real name first. Let's talk about Chen Tianxi. Also, I don't know if the people here can be trusted, but if anyone dares to leak any information, don't blame me for being merciless. You will soon see the consequences of Yuan Gate, Sky Sword Sect, and Floating Mist Sect. If any of you are still wavering or have already been roped in, it is best to stop immediately. There is still time. Also, Grandfather Xia, why didn't you mention your conditions? If we lose, we have to give up 10 million miles of land. If they lose, they have to give up 10 million miles of land as well. Also, hand over everyone from Yuan Gate, Sky Sword Sect, and Floating Mist Sect. Not a single one of them can be missing, Chen Hao said arrogantly. At this moment he did not even give face to Xiao Lingfeng, an elder. This was not the time to give face. Xiao Lingfeng and the others smiled bitterly. Mention their conditions? They had no chance of winning. What conditions could they mention? However, since Chen Hao had said so, and with such information, they naturally had to mention their conditions. Moreover, there was no reason for them not to agree. This was something that could not be violated in any battle. Xiao Lingfeng felt that his aura was completely suppressed by Chen Hao, so he could only say in a low voice, I will mention it later. Yes, when you mention it, remember to ask for an exorbitant price. Ask for 20 million miles and their 3 sections. Also, add on a challenge. Challenge? That's right. 40 disciples from Limitless Immortal Palace challenging 80 from Limitless Demon Palace and Limitless Demon Palace. It has nothing to do with the Eastern continent. If they are afraid, then forget it. It doesn't matter, Chen Hao said. At this point he looked at the people from Limitless Immortal Palace and said, Do you dare? Chapter 454. This. Other than Jiang Hai and Huang Wenxiu, the rest of the 40 people from Limitless Immortal Palace had heard of Chen Hao's name. However, such an arrogant move made them feel awkward. 40 people against 80 people. Was this possible? The Demon Dao is just fishing in troubled waters. No one is willing to fight to the death. The real opponent is Limitless Demon Palace. You don't need to fight them. We don't need to fight. Jiang Hai, Huang Wenxiu, Xiao Shui, Xiao Wu, Yu Yu and Xiao Lian will take care of the 40 people from Limitless Demon Palace. You just need to hold back most of the people from Limitless Demon Palace, Chen Hao said. Cough cough. Whether it was Jiang Hai, Huang Wenxiu or the people present, they all thought that Chen Hao was crazy or overconfident. 7 people against 40 people? And the 7 of them were all in the early stage of the manifestation realm? If he wasn't out of his mind, then what was? However, the next scene caused many people to gasp in shock. Hiss hiss hiss, rays of dazzling light suddenly shot out from Chen Hao's hands and floated in front of Jiang Hai and the other 6 people. Helmets, armors, gauntlets, leggings, battle boots. Every set had a different style, but every piece of equipment was exuding an endless mysterious aura at this moment. Precious light flowed, enveloping the entire hall in a layer of blurred colors. This is a set of middle-grade spirit treasures that I obtained from the ruins. It is not weaker than a high-grade spirit treasure. Not only does it have an amazing defensive ability, it can increase the battle power by several times when the array is activated. It also comes with a powerful skill. You should refine it as soon as possible. This. Boss. Just refine it. Chen Hao directly interrupted Jiang Hai. His gaze swept across the shocked faces and finally landed on the disciples of Limitless Immortal Palace. He said, I obtained a lot of treasures in the ruins, but I am not familiar with your situation. Now, as long as you dare to participate in the battle, tell me what you need the most. But you can only choose one middle-grade spirit treasure. Okay. Brother Chen, I agree. I agree too. In an instant, the remaining 38 disciples all excitedly made their promises. That was a middle-grade soul treasure. Furthermore, it was a middle-grade soul treasure that had been found in the ruins. Judging from the 6 sets that Chen Hao had taken out, any one of them contained an aura that could not be compared to an ordinary upper-grade soul treasure. Furthermore, the runes on them were something that they had never seen before. Even if there was only one piece, how much would their combat strength increase? What's more, according to Chen Hao's words, they only needed to pin down the disciples of Limitless Demon Palace. As long as they weren't stupid, they would definitely agree to such a cheap deal. Alright, Jiang Hai, Huang Wenxiu, you guys record what they need. I can't guarantee that you'll be able to find something that completely meets your needs, but a mid-grade spirit treasure should not be a problem, Chen Hao said with a smile. Then he looked at Xia Lingfeng and said, Grandpa Xia, everyone here should stay here and wait. You just need to bring a few people to negotiate with them. The time was set for 3 days later. What do you think? Xia Lingfeng stared at Chen Hao and seemed to hesitate for a moment. Then he took a deep breath and said, All right. However, Chen Hao, you don't have to worry about them. Those who can enter this hall are the foundation of our eastern continent. They have all taken a blood oath. No one would dare to betray us. It's not appropriate for them to wait here. They still have to go out and appease the disciples and do many other things. Oh, since that's the case, it doesn't matter. However, the news of my return, other than those of us here, don't let anyone else know for the time being. That's not a problem. Everyone heard that, right? Clan leader Xia, brother Chen Hao, don't worry. The elders present all responded. They had already addressed Chen Hao as brother. In the world of cultivation, strength was everything. The power and wealth that Chen Hao had just displayed had far exceeded their expectations. It was not something that they could compare to what was great luck and great opportunity. Chen Hao was one of them. Chen Hao, who was once the #1 person among the younger generation in the eastern continent, had just returned and brought them hope of creating a miracle again. Xia Lingfeng led the remaining 6 clan leaders of the 10 immortal Dao sects to the intersection of the 3 realms, and the Milky Way to reply and renegotiate. As Chen Hao had expected, the other party did not hesitate at all, and agreed to Xia Lingfeng's exorbitant conditions. In their opinion, Xia Lingfeng and the others were simply idiots. Asking for conditions? Even if they agreed to give the demon realm, and the demon realm to the immortal realm, they had to have the ability to take them all. Moreover, they had no chance of winning at all. Any conditions were nothing more than empty promises that had no hope of being fulfilled. As for the disciples of Limitless Immortal Palace who took the initiative to challenge the 80 disciples of Limitless Demon Palace and Limitless Demon Palace, it made the disciples of the 2 great palaces laugh their heads off. In their opinion, the disciples of Limitless Immortal Palace must have gone mad from anger. They were too ashamed to face the immortal venerables of Limitless Immortal Palace, which was why they made such an impulsive decision. Why did they not agree? Fearing that they would change their minds if they agreed too late, they signed the agreement quickly. Chen Hao chatted with Chen Shui and the others in the room for a while. After getting the results from Jiang Hai and Huang Wenxu's statistics, he directly entered a cultivation room in the palace that was specially set aside for him. Nominally, he helped the 38 people to equip them. In reality, what did he choose? It was all made by himself. Except for Chen Shui, who had vaguely guessed it, no one would have thought that these spiritual treasures were made by Chen Hao. Not to mention the equipment for 40 people. Even a middle-grade spiritual treasure would take 10 days, or even a few months to refine successfully. Moreover, only a celestial prime-level blacksmith could do it. There was also a prerequisite, which was to have sufficient precious materials. Refining a middle-grade spiritual treasure was not difficult for an earth immortal or celestial immortal level blacksmith. However, spiritual treasures were extremely precious and rare. The reason was not that they could not refine them, but that they did not have so many precious materials. The higher the level of the spiritual treasure, the more precious the materials were, and even the materials were hard to find. Congratulations, junior brother. Congratulations, junior brother. Ha ha. Junior brother, you are really wise and mighty. Junior brother's luck with women is boundless. In a huge palace in the diabolism area of the 3 realms, Soul Fighter sat cross-legged in a cultivation room. His body was surrounded by a terrifying aura. He slowly opened his eyes and stared at the 20 or so peak late-stage manifestation experts who had entered. He said, "What's there to be surprised about? Everything is as I expected. When is it set?" 3 days later. The battle will start at the intersection of the heavenly rivers of the 3 realms. Very good. All of you can go now. Don't disturb me in these 3 days. Soul Fighter's eyes were sharp and full of confidence as he spoke. Junior brother, you are about to break through? More or less go. Yes. After watching the crowd leave, Soul Fighter's face revealed a perverted smile. In the ruins, because of Chen Hao's deterrence, He had been cultivating madly for 3 months. After stepping out of the ruins and learning of Chen Hao's death, the knot in his heart had been untied, and his temperament had changed. However, he did not have any chance to kill all of Chen Hao's people even after more than a month. Moreover, after Chen Shui and the others had stepped into the manifestation realm, they had displayed strength that even he did not have an absolute advantage. At that time, because of the Immortal Dao Origin School, the Floating Mist Sect, and the Sky Sword Sect, the 2 realms of the East Continent's Immortal Dao and the Demon Dao were about to go to war. Soul Fighter had coincidentally received the news. In addition, he had already collected detailed information about Chen Hao, Chen Shui, Helian Wuxia, Xia Yuyu, and Tantai Lian. When he tracked Chen Shui and the others back to the East Continent, he immediately made a decision. Taking advantage of the fact that the Immortal Dao and Demon Dao in the East Continent had not developed into an uncontrollable state, he gathered some genius disciples of the Demon Dao and went to the Limitless Demon Palace in advance. It could be said that the reason the 3 realms had developed to such an extent was all thanks to Soul Fighter. You're already dead. When I push your woman under my crotch and make her moan delicately, your destiny will belong to me, right? Haha. That Chen Shui is extremely powerful. Fortunately, I'm about to advance to the late manifestation realm. But it doesn't matter. With those idiots from the Demon Dao, we have more than 20 people at the peak of the late manifestation realm. Perhaps I don't even need to do anything. They will become my mates. Haha. So what if they are powerful in battle? Once they sign the contract, they will have to serve me obediently. The only worry is that they will commit suicide after losing. Soul Fighter's expression was lustful and vicious, and his eyes flashed. I'll advance to the late manifestation realm first. The night before the final battle. Phew. Chen Hao, who was pale and drenched in sweat, slowly opened his eyes. For 3 whole days, Chen Hao did not dare to stay for even a moment. Now he had finally completed his mission. 38 middle-grade spirit weapons. Although the time was a little rushed, it was not much worse than Xiao Shui's. I'll recover first. 15 minutes later, Chen Hao stepped out of the cultivation room and arrived in front of the crowd who had been anxiously waiting for him. I'm sorry, I have to try out these spirit treasures one by one before I know their effects. I've kept everyone waiting. I've already removed the brand, and they should be able to satisfy your needs. Take them and refine them. Hiss. A total of 38 spirit treasures floated in front of the disciples of Wuxia Celestial Palace. There were swords, armors, gauntlets, and boots. However, each sword was unique, and they were all refined by Chen Hao according to each person's needs. Your names are pasted on them, don't get it wrong. Chen Hao said to the crowd, whose eyes were wide with surprise. This is mine. Mine. Hiss. In the blink of an eye, all 38 people were snatched up. Brother Chen, these spirit treasures, will they belong to us in the future? One of the disciples asked as he looked at Chen Hao in disbelief. Today is the last update. I have to go out in the afternoon, and will only be back after 9 o'clock at night. Sorry. Chapter 455. Of course. Don't reveal it before the battle begins. When the time comes, we'll give them a surprise. Go and temper yourselves, Chen Hao said with a faint smile. Ah, great. I guarantee they'll be pleasantly surprised. After that, Xiao Lingfeng, the sect masters of the other 6 sects, Yuan Tairan, Chen Hao, Chen Shui, and the other girls discussed the order of battle tomorrow. Even though Chen Hao and the 4 women appeared to be very confident, Xiao Lingfeng and the others still could not believe that Chen Hao and the other 4 could defeat 40 people, including more than 20 experts at the peak of the later stage of the Blessed Realm. After all, although a mediocre grade spirit treasure was powerful, it was still a worldly possession. Moreover, it was limited by one's cultivation level. No one could estimate how much combat power it could unleash. However, things had already progressed to this stage. At least there was more hope than before Chen Hao's return. The final outcome could only be left to fate. Let's go. Early the next morning, more than 40,000 manifestation stage cultivators from the Immortal Path gathered. At Xiao Lingfeng's command, they rose into the air and flew toward the intersection of the 3 realms' heavenly rivers. Aside from the 6 unfamiliar teenagers with different appearances and restrained their auras, Chen Shui, Jiang Hai, Huang Wenxiu, and the other disciples from Infinite Immortal Palace, Xia Lingfeng, the sect master, and a few other Grand Supreme Elders who knew about Chen Hao's return, all had incredibly grave expressions on their faces. There was no need to even mention the other powerful fighters in Blessed Realm. They had long since confirmed the outcome of the battle in their hearts. This was undoubtedly a decision they were forced to make to protect the immortal Tao in the Eastern Continent. Everyone looked at Chen Shui, Helian Wuzi, Xia Yuyu, and Tantai Lian with gratitude and sympathy. The same was true for the star-picking sect. The 4 girls would become their captives and the star-picking sect would be annihilated. Who are those 6 youths? They're all at the early stage of the manifestation stage and they're so young. Why haven't I heard of them before? I don't know. I find it strange too. But they must be young experts secretly cultivated by the Ling Tian sect and the other grade 9 sects? What a pity. What's the use of coming out now? Since he's going to lose anyway, he might as well continue hiding. In the future he can still become an expert of the immortal Tao. Yes. Sigh. That Chen Hao was once the hope of the immortal Tao in the Eastern Continent. In the past 3 years, we have also seen hope. The changes in the immortal Tao in the Eastern Continent are obvious to all. But who would have thought that it would become the misfortune of our immortal Tao? You can't say that. Since the providence of our Eastern Continent's immortal Tao is already closely tied to him, we naturally have to stand together regardless of honor or disgrace. Currently, it's said that Chen Hao has made a name for himself in the Central Continent, and both palace halls of the limitless Celestial Palace value him greatly. Although the rumor that he's dead has spread, I don't think it's accurate. Otherwise, the Ling Tian sect and the Star-Plucking sect would have done something about it. It's really a pity for them. The 2 old men in Blessed Realm who were communicating with each other through voice transmissions cast their gazes at the 100 or so cultivators at the back of the group. Aside from the 6 grand elders of the Star-Picking sect, as well as the inner and outer sect elders, there were also over 80 disciples. Among these disciples, the youngest was only in their teens, while the oldest was only in their 40s or 50s. In the world of cultivation, they were considered very young, but at this moment, they were walking step by step toward death. These people were all listed by name by the Demon Tao, and detailed information about each of them was available. Based on the list alone, anyone could tell that it was completely targeted at Chen Hao. Everyone who was related to Chen Hao was on the list, regardless of their cultivation base. Clearly, this list wasn't something that Soul Fighter could come up with based on the information he'd obtained. It was something that the 3 great traitorous sects, the Origin School, the Drifting Mist sect, and the Skysword sect, had joined forces with the mastermind behind all this. The Star-Picking sect and the 4 women were part of the wager. Once the Demon Tao and Demon Tao won the battle, the Star-Picking sect would disappear from the world of cultivation. Naturally, the Star-Picking sect's sect master, grand elders and inner and outer sect elders would all be included. However, they couldn't kill the countless young disciples as and when they wanted to. In fact, the Star-Picking sect had already dismissed all their disciples a few days ago, turning them into an empty shell. It was precisely because of this that Soul Fighter and the others had listed all the disciples related to Chen Hao when they set the terms of the wager. In other words, any one of these people was part of the wager, and not a single one could be missing. 3 days ago, before Chen Hao had started refining his magic treasure, he had already learned about this situation from the 4 women. However, he had resisted the urge to go to the palace where the Star-Picking sect disciples were imprisoned. At this moment, he had already split into 6, each with different appearances. Moreover, he had completely changed his aura through a mysterious array and equipment. Sensing the 100 or so Star-Picking sect disciples at the back of the group, a monstrous killing intent surged from the depths of his heart toward the Origin School, the Skysword sect, and the Drifting Mist sect for colluding with the Demon Tao. Of course, there were also the disciples from the Limitless Demon Palace. Chen Hao didn't know that Soul Fighter was also here, but he knew that the Demon Tao wouldn't let off any cultivator related to him. It was definitely Soul Fighter's subordinates who had done this. What's wrong with you? Chen Shui couldn't help but ask when she sensed the aura fluctuation of Chen Hao's original body. Nothing. Carrying the upgraded 1,000 illusions, Chen Hao couldn't see any relationship with his original appearance. After hearing Chen Shui's voice transmission, he abruptly cut off his own senses. He couldn't bear to watch or listen any longer. Otherwise, he was afraid that he really wouldn't be able to control himself. The killing intent was getting stronger and stronger. He didn't dare to imagine what kind of tragedy would have happened if he hadn't returned. His younger brother and sister, whom he hadn't seen for a few years, were already experts at the peak of the Golden Core stage. His younger brother, Chen Nan, was handsome and had a determined look in his eyes. He was fearless. His younger sister, Chen Yan, had already become a young girl, like a blooming little white flower. Her appearance and figure were shockingly similar to Chen Shui's, but their temperaments were completely different. Lil Ling, Xiaojian, Buttface, Xiao Jishan, Xiao Jifei, and the others were also present. Each of them had reached the Golden Core stage. Dongfang Ting, Yifei Xue, Yangfan, and Ijian Pain, Li Yifeng, Dongfang Jun, and Mo Yui. They were all present. What surprised Chen Hao even more was that the once charming and mature Xiao Mei was actually present. No matter what, this was something he couldn't have imagined. What was even more unexpected was that Xiao Mei's cultivation had actually reached the nascent soul stage. She wasn't very beautiful, but the once charming and gentle Xiao Mei's eyes contained a deep emotion that shocked Chen Hao. Her expression was different from everyone else's. Facing the threat of death, her face was actually brimming with pride, and a sense of not turning back. Even Chen Hao couldn't understand why Xiao Mei would have such an expression. However, the emotion contained in Xiao Mei's eyes made him feel apprehensive. He even felt an indescribable tremor in his heart and a deep sense of doubt. In the past, Chen Hao didn't have any in-depth research on women because of the restrictions of his cultivation method and cultivation realm. But now he had already advanced to the blessed realm. With his powerful soul perception, he could clearly sense the auras of men and women, which were the most difficult to distinguish between the world and the Yin-Yang ruins. These were things that Mo Wuxin, who had cultivated a special cultivation method in the demonic path, could see at a glance when he was in the nascent soul stage or the golden core stage. And now, Chen Hao could see that Xiao Mei was still a virgin. The primordial yin in her body was still intact. How was this possible? When he went back the last time, Xiao Mei had already gotten together with Xiao Feng. How could she still retain her primordial yin? But this was the truth. In the past he couldn't tell, but now he was certain. Even Chen Hao himself didn't know that after he made this discovery, a hint of undetectable joy actually surged out from the depths of his heart. It was just like the indescribable emotions that surged out from the depths of his heart when he found out that Xiao Mei and Xiao Feng had gotten together. He didn't think that there was anything wrong with him. In fact, even the slightest thought could be erased and turned into blessings for Xiao Mei and Xiao Feng. However, Chen Hao clearly underestimated the position of the first mature woman who gave him fantasies since he came to this world in his heart. At this moment, Chen Hao still didn't realize that his entire mind was filled with monstrous killing intent. Kill. 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 The disciples of the Limitless Demon Palace, the leaders of the Yuan Gate, Sky Sword Sect, and Floating Mist Sect. He wanted to kill all of them with his sword. Their souls wouldn't be extinguished. Yes, their souls wouldn't be extinguished. All along, Chen Hao wasn't willing to use the old god's special ability. Firstly, he didn't want to rely on the old god, which would restrict his progress. Secondly, he didn't want his mind to become a hodgepodge of countless living beings. But now, simply killing these people was no longer enough to satisfy the monstrous killing intent in his heart. Chi. There was no sign at all. What Chen Shui and the others did not expect was that Chen Hao, who had originally said that he would use his clone to fight, and would only reveal his true self when he fought against the evil cult disciples, suddenly put away his clone at that moment and returned to his original appearance. Not far from Chen Hao, Xiao Lingfeng, Yuan Tairan, Chen Shui, Helian Wuzi, and the rest, as well as the disciples of the Limitless Immortal Palace, all looked at Chen Hao in confusion. Don't worry. If they dare to break the contract, Chen Hao, will definitely wash the demonic world with blood. No matter who it is, don't even think about escaping. Don't be afraid that they will shed all pretense of cordiality and start a war. The ones who will lose will definitely be them. If I can take out dozens of sets of spiritual treasures, I can take out even more. So what if they have a few times more people than us? Chen Hao said in an incomparably cold voice. Ah, Chen Hao. That's Chen Hao. What? Chen Hao. Chen Hao is back. Chen Hao. It's really Chen Hao. It's obviously 6 completely different figures, but they actually gathered together to form Chen Hao. Could it be that they are all his doppelganger? Buzz buzz buzz. In the blink of an eye, starting from the front of the team, Chen Hao's doppelganger suddenly became one. Like a heavy bomb, it exploded in the crowd. Chapter 456. Chen Hao. Chen Hao. Brother. 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 In an instant, Chen Hao's name spread from the front of the group to the back of the group. The 100 or so disciples of the star-picking sect were pleasantly surprised, especially those who were familiar with Chen Hao. Chen Nan and Chen Yan were so excited that they wanted to rush over. Unfortunately, they were being carried by the Supreme Elder and the other creation stage experts. Everyone, don't be excited. The battle is imminent. Let's not disturb him. Since Chen Hao is back, he will definitely come to see you. Please believe that we can survive this crisis. The 6 Supreme Elders were also confused. They didn't understand why Chen Hao had suddenly exposed himself, but when they saw how excited the crowd was, they had to stop them. Hiss. At that moment, a ray of light flashed by, and Chen Hao appeared in front of the 100 or so disciples of the star-picking sect. Brother. Brother. The younger sister, Chen Yan, and the younger brother, Chen Nan, cried out in alarm. They struggled to jump towards Chen Hao. At this moment, the Grand Elder, who was carrying the 2 of them, couldn't stop them. He gently sent out a ray of energy, removing the protection around the 2 of them, and pushed them away. Little Nan, little Yan. Chen Hao smiled and opened his arms. The 3 siblings hugged each other tightly. Although Chen Nan was excited, he only hugged his brother for a while before he separated. He looked at his brother, whom he hadn't seen for several years, with excitement in his eyes. Chen Yan, on the other hand, was still hugging Chen Hao tightly and burying her face in his chest, just like when she was young. Brother, why didn't you come to see me when you came back? Aren't I here now? Okay, get up. You've grown up, but you're still the same as when you were a child. Chen Hao pulled Chen Yan away affectionately, and said as he looked at the familiar faces. Brother Tianxi. But Face smiled honestly. Boss. Mo Yui and Dongfang Jun shouted excitedly. Xiao Jishan, Xiao Jifei, Xiao Ling, and the others felt the powerful aura on Chen Hao's body. They were all excited, but they didn't say anything. How should they address him? The difference in status and realm was no longer the same as it had been in the past. Xiao Jian averted her gaze. When she met Chen Hao's gaze, she immediately lowered her head. Xiao Mei, on the other hand, stared at Chen Hao in a daze. She looked as if she was in a dream. In the end, she smiled. 6 Grand Elders and Seniors, I'll have to trouble you to bring them back to the sect first. Once Chen Hao nodded to the group, he looked at the 6 Grand Supreme Elders and the blessed realm martial artist who was helping to lead the people away, and said those words. This, we won't lose. I'm only worried that a great war between immortals and demons will break out. They won't be safe here. Don't worry. Listen to Chen Hao. At some point, Xiao Lingfeng and Yuan Tairan had arrived in front of everyone. Xiao Lingfeng spoke directly. Yes. Brother. I'm not leaving, I want to stay with you. Xiao Yan, don't cause trouble. If we stay here, we will only affect Big Brother. Listen to Big Brother. Chen Nan pulled Chen Yan over and said calmly, Brother, we will wait for your good news. Okay. Go ahead. Chen Hao waved his hand and said, Grand Supreme Elder, what is my brother's realm? Was his cultivation very, very high? Will he be okay? When the 6 Grand Supreme Elders and a dozen or so Blessed Realm experts led the star-picking sect disciples away from the 3 Realms galaxy, Chen Yan tugged at a Grand Supreme Elder's arm and asked with a hint of worry on her face. Hearing Chen Yan's words, Chen Nan, Butt-Face, Xiao Mei, Mo Yui, and the others all looked at the Grand Supreme Elder. Don't worry, your brother has reached the blessed realm. We don't know exactly how high he is, but the martial artists at the peak of the blessed realm are definitely not his match. Since he has returned, he will definitely be able to do it. But aren't the martial artists at the peak of the blessed realm all at the peak of the blessed realm? It's different. No one can predict your brother's strength. With him, we will definitely win, definitely. The Grand Supreme Elder said. However, the more he emphasized it, the more worried he was. Fortunately, as an old man, he did not show his worry on his face. Grandpa Xia, if there are any accidents, immediately give the order for everyone to flee back to their sects and use their sects to defend. Just give me some time. Try to gather them in the 9th grade and 8th grade sections. You can inform all the sect leaders now and be mentally prepared. Although the probability of it happening is very small, we still have to take precautions. As they continued to rush toward the intersection of the Three Realms galaxy, Chenhao sent a message to the worried Xiaolingfeng. What is the level of your battle prowess? I choose to believe you, so shouldn't you tell me the truth? This concerns the survival of the entire Eastern Continent's immortal path. If it's true, it's okay for me to become a sinner, but I can't bear the burden of billions of lives on the immortal path. I am confident that I can defeat anyone below the human immortal stage. As long as they don't send any human immortals, we will definitely win. But they have more than 20 martial artists at the peak of the blessed realm. We only have 5 of you in the blessed realm. Don't worry, even if there are 100 of them, it won't be a problem. The only thing we have to worry about is that they will break the contract. Now no one can spread the news of the Eastern Continent. This is the main reason. Otherwise, we don't have to worry at all. All right, I will make the arrangements now. Xiaolingfeng said helplessly, both shocked and shocked. Hiss! At the intersection of the Three Realms galaxy, the demon world and the monster world were densely packed with nearly 300,000 cultivators. There were about 200,000 in the demon world alone, and close to 100,000 in the monster world. Combined, they were almost 8 times the size of the immortal world. Those in the Three Realms who were qualified to come here were all at least at the blessed realm. Such a great disparity in numbers was the reason why the immortal path had no choice but to submit. Once the war between the immortal path, demon path, and monster path broke out, how could they possibly win? Not bad. You actually managed to gather 40,000 people. Xiaolingfeng, have you chosen your 20 young disciples? If I'm not wrong, there are only 4 of you, right? Ha. The sect master of the Origin School, who had once been known as the most powerful person in the Eastern Continent, was now like a dog of the demon sect. He stood at the front of the demon sect's team and stared at Xiaolingfeng from afar as he hooted. Beside him was the sect master of the Sky Sword sect and the sect master of the Floating Mist sect. Humph, shameless scum. Scum like you will definitely die a horrible death. Cut the crap. 5 of our disciples are enough to deal with you, Xiaolingfeng said coldly. Ha. 5. What a surprise. Did another genius return from the outside world? I don't think any of those who redeemed you are in the blessed realm, the sect master of the Sky Sword sect mocked. Cut the crap. Let's fight. At that moment, a cold voice suddenly sounded from behind. Understood. The sect master of the Origin School and the other 2 immediately stopped shouting and retreated to the back. They stared coldly at their colleagues who had once idolized them as experts in the Eastern Continent's immortal path. Whoosh. 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 120 disciples from the Limitless Demon Palace, the Monster Palace, and the Limitless Celestial Palace instantly flew to the intersection of the Three Realms galaxy. Xiaolingfeng and the other 2 leaders of the Eastern Continent's 3 paths were also in position. 7 youths at the peak of the late-stage Blessed Realm stepped out from the Demon Sect's team, while the Demon Sect's team had 20 people. It's him? How is that possible? When Chen Shui, Helian Wuzi, Xia Yuyu, and Tantai Lian stepped out, Chen Hao, who had concealed his aura, also stepped out from the crowd and came to their side. The 7 disciples from the demon sect who were preparing to fight did not have any reaction. However, Chen Hao's team of 5 and Soul Fighter's team of 20 changed their expressions at the same time. Chen Hao's team of 5 did not expect Soul Fighter to be among the 20 people. When Chen Hao saw Soul Fighter, he was shocked, furious, and excited. Chen Hao already knew that the 40 people from the demon sect included the disciple who had chased after him with Soul Fighter. He also knew that this was all because of Soul Fighter's hatred for him. After this incident, no matter where he was, Chen Hao would kill Soul Fighter with his sword. But he did not expect Soul Fighter to be here. How could he not be excited? Unlike Chen Hao, Soul Fighter, and the others who knew Chen Hao felt their hair stand on end when they saw Chen Hao. It was as if they had seen a ghost. Impossible, impossible. How can he not be dead? How can he be in the East Continent? He clearly died in the ruins. Soul Fighter and the others were extremely terrified. Even though Soul Fighter had already advanced to the late stage of the manifestation realm, the trauma that Chen Hao had left in his heart was still so deep that it could not be erased. Especially since Chen Hao's aura was clearly at the blessed realm. Haha. Chen Hao? The number one person among the younger generation of the immortal Dao in the East Continent. Chen Hao. Haha. Kid. I did not expect you to come back. The heavens have eyes. The Yuan Gate, the Sky Sword sect, and the Floating Mist sect are where they are today because of you. Haha. When the Yuan Gate sect master saw Chen Hao, he could not help but laugh maniacally. Brother Mo, this kid is a disciple of the star-picking sect. Please don't kill him. I have to thank him properly. If I don't make him suffer a fate worse than death, I will not be able to express my gratitude. Scram. Without any warning, Mo Wuxin let out a furious roar and directly sent the Yuan Gate sect master, who had jumped in front of him roaring, flying with a kick. He stared fixedly at Chen Hao and said, "You're actually not dead. How can I die if I don't send you to the Western Paradise?" Chen Hao stared coldly at Soul Fighter and said, "The contract has been signed. Do you want to come at me one by one or all at once? It's up to you. Don't try to run away. I can kill you like killing a chicken here. No one can stop me." Boom. As he spoke, a terrifying aura suddenly exploded from Chen Hao's body. A monstrous battle intent and a sharp sword intent instantly swept across a radius of several thousand miles. At this moment, even a peak late-stage Blessed Realm expert felt his entire body turn cold, as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. Chapter 457. Hahachi. Chen Hao's arrogant words made Mo Wuxian laugh in anger. The aura around his body was also released and scrupulously. The monstrous demon chi filled half the sky in an instant, and formed an equal force with Chen Hao's aura. Faintly, Mo Wuxian had the upper hand. Soul Fighter, as the number one genius disciple of the Broken Heart Hall of the Limitless Demon Palace, was outstanding in terms of talent, combat strength and aptitude. During the genius battle he had the ability to challenge people above his level. He was much stronger than Jiang Hai, the number one disciple of the Limitless Immortal Palace's Cold Plum Hall. And at this moment, he was angered by Chen Hao. The pressure and aura he displayed proved all this. All the disciples of the Limitless Demon Palace, more than 300,000 cultivators of the Demon Path and Immortal Path, looked at Soul Fighter in horror. "You're only at the early stage of the creation realm. I'd like to see what ability you have to be so arrogant." Haha. Soul Fighter's aura surged, and the fear in his heart was instantly cut off. He stared coldly at Chen Hao and said, "If you die, they can still be my maids and drag out an ignoble existence. And now since you're here, then all of you can die for me. Haha. I'll make you watch helplessly as they perish. Hahaha. I hope your strength is stronger than your mouth. Otherwise, you don't even have the qualifications to fight with me. According to the agreement, let's begin. Kill them all without mercy. Kill without mercy. Okay." Boom. One of the 19 young experts besides Soul Fighter suddenly rushed to the central area, where the heavenly rivers of the three realms intersected. These disciples were all Soul Fighter's assistants in the various halls of the Limitless Demon Palace. Although they were much weaker than Soul Fighter, they were still at the peak of the late stage of the creation realm. How could they be afraid of Chen Hao, who was only at the early stage of the creation realm? What's more, including the Demon Path disciples who were fishing in troubled waters, there were a total of 27 people. They could wear Chen Hao and the other 4 to death. What was there to be afraid of? Be careful. Chen Hao looked at Tantai Lian and transmitted his voice. Okay. Hiss. Boom. Tantai Lien, who was dressed in a pink dress, flew towards the intersection of the heavenly rivers of the three realms like a burning flame. Among the four girls, her battle prowess was the weakest, but she was the one who worked the hardest to cultivate. However, this was only a comparison between the four women. Among the four women, no matter who it was, they were all rare geniuses in the Wuxia Immortal Palace. Even though they were only at the peak of the initial stage of the manifestation realm, the inheritance of the phoenix, as well as Tantai Lien's powerful vital essence control, allowed her to possess strength that was comparable to geniuses at the peak of the late stage of the manifestation realm. Moreover, at this moment, she still had a set of middle-grade spiritual treasures that was comparable to upper-grade spiritual treasures, and contained powerful functions that had not been exposed. It was precisely because of this that Chun Hao dared to send Tantai Lien out. Haha. Beauty, you didn't have to die. But now he had no choice but to ruthlessly destroy the flower. Even though it was a ruined flower. Ha ha ha. The demonic Dao disciple stared at Tantai Lien. His eyes filled with lust as he spoke in an unbridled manner. The people of the devil Dao, except for those who practiced orthodox cultivation methods, could basically see through the existence of a woman's primordial yin at a glance. As for Tantai Lien, she was already a serious woman. Therefore, at this moment, this fellow naturally wanted to use the most vicious words to infuriate Tantai Lien. Unfortunately, huff, huff, what welcomed him was scorching hot heavenly fire. Ninefold heavenly fire? Unfortunately, you are only at the peak of the initial stage of the manifestation realm. If you were at the late stage of the manifestation realm, I would really be afraid. Break for me. Rumble. The demonic Dao disciple clearly knew about Tantai Lien. Facing the terrifying ninefold heavenly fire, he did not show the slightest bit of fear. He struck out with his palm and advanced instead of retreating. The protective vital essence around him condensed into powerful energy that forcefully blocked the heavenly fire. The curtains to an intense battle immediately opened. Apart from those who already knew about Tantai Lien, the people from the three sides were all shocked. Her opponent was a genius disciple of the Wuxia Immortal Palace, but Tantai Lien was not at a disadvantage even though she was two small realms below him. The nine heavens fire that filled the sky was like a sea of fire from purgatory. Under her powerful control, it condensed into numerous profound and terrifying formations. The power that was released caused countless old men at the peak of the late stage of Blessed Realm to be shocked and terrified. The ones who were most affected were none other than the sect master and grand supreme elders of the Eastern Continent's Immortal Dao sect. In the intersect competition more than 3 years ago, Tantai Lien was merely a very talented but low-level young girl in their eyes. But today, the power she displayed already left them in the dust. Humph, you are indeed difficult to deal with. Then I'll let you experience my true power. Condense. Chi. The demonic Dao disciple used a full 5 minutes, but still could not do anything to Tantai Lien. Finally, he could not help but begin to condense his ultimate move. Die. Boom. Ah, how is that possible? At that moment, countless exclamations erupted from the three sides. They originally thought that the demonic Dao disciple, who was about to condense his ultimate move, would definitely display an absolute advantage in terms of realms and defeat Tantai Lien. But what they did not expect was that Tantai Lien did not give him a chance. The demonic Dao disciple had deliberately opened up a distance of 10,000 feet between the two of them. He had enough time to condense his ultimate move, but at that moment, when Tantai Lien spat out the word die, a dazzling red light suddenly shone under her feet. The aura of the middle-grade numinous treasure battle boots shone out, and 2 flames that were 1,000 feet long gushed out. They were like 2 long tails. There was nothing profound about them, just the purest explosion of energy. However, they instantly increased Tantai Lien's speed by more than 10 times. She became one with her sword. Her essence, chi, and soul were completely gathered at the tip of her sword. It was like a laser. Ah! A shrill and terrified scream erupted. Splat! Boom! A cloud of blood exploded, and it was immediately reduced to ashes by the terrifyingly high temperature of the ninefold heavenly fire. The demonic Tao disciple at the peak of the late stage of the manifestation realm disappeared without a trace. Only the fallen sword and storage ring remained in the eyes of the crowd. There was a burnt smell in the air. At that moment, the army of more than 300,000 people was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. No one had expected this. Even Xiao Lingfeng and the others who knew that Tantai Lian had a middle-grade spiritual treasure set did not expect that a pair of combat boots would have such an unexpected effect. It had forcefully turned the opponent's secret skill into a fatal blow. Good. Good kill. Ha ha ha, good kill. Someone from the Immortal Tao sect took the lead to cheer. Immediately, nearly 40,000 people from the Immortal Tao sect erupted into thunderous cheers. Sneak attack with a numinous treasure? What kind of skill is that? A grand old and cold voice suddenly rang out from the void. It was not loud, but what was shocking was that it directly suppressed the cheers of tens of thousands of people. The moment he heard the voice, Chen Hao's expression changed, and he looked up at the sky. "Ah, welcome, ancestor." When the first leader of the 10 demonic Tao sects heard the voice, he was obviously very shocked and pleasantly surprised. He suddenly looked up at the void, cupped his fists and bowed respectfully. Half-step human immortal. He's a half-step human immortal. Who is he? Chen Hao looked at Xiao Lingfeng, who was shocked and frowning. The first leader of the demonic Tao sect in the East Continent 300 years ago, and also the most powerful expert, Yi Tian Xieqing. I didn't expect him to be a half-step human immortal. Yi Tian Xieqing, half-step human immortal. Phew. Chen Hao took a deep breath. Originally, the only pressure he felt was not pressure. It was just that he was worried that Yi Tian Xieqing would break the agreement and start the war between the three realms. However, Chen Hao believed that as long as he had a little bit of time, he could use his endless numinous treasures and his personal strength to make Yi Tian Xieqing die even more miserably. However, Chen Hao did not want that kind of ending. After all, no matter how powerful a person was, there was a limit to it. At that time, no matter if it was the Immortal Tao, Demon Tao, or Demon Tao, there would be rivers of blood, and the people would be plunged into misery and suffering. How could he be willing to do something that would cause the mortals to suffer when the immortals fought? However, that possibility was very small, because he already had a strategy. But now the appearance of a half-step human immortal made Chen Hao feel a great challenge. Humph. Yi Tian Xieqing snorted coldly and slowly landed in front of the demonic Tao army. He had red hair, red beard and red eyebrows. His eyes were a terrifying blood red. But the most terrifying thing was his face. Half of his face was wrinkled, like an old man with one foot in the grave, giving off a strong sense of death. The other half was smooth and delicate, containing a boundless vitality. This was because this old man was at the end of his lifespan. But he was very lucky and broke through to the half-step human immortal stage at this critical moment, giving him a new lease of life. If he could trigger the heavenly punishment and successfully pass the tribulation, he would return to his normal appearance and gain 3,000 years of lifespan. This gambling battle is a battle between the demonic Tao and the young disciples of the Immortal Tao. The fight for the genius fate must be built on true strength. Who gave you the guts to use your middle-grade numinous treasures and launch a sneak attack? Yi Tian Xieqing exuded billowing demonic qi and swept towards the Immortal Tao people. His scarlet eyes locked onto Xiao Lingfeng. Xiao Lingfeng was furious and wanted to refute. But what shocked him was that his opponent's terrifying aura went straight into the depths of his mind. For a moment he could not speak. Boom. At this moment, Chen Hao stepped out and stood in front of Xiao Lingfeng. His aura did not increase, but his dark eyes were like two sharp swords, piercing through Yi Tian Xieqing's aura. Where did this old dog come from? A half-dead thing dares to come out and spout nonsense? Open your dog eyes and see what is fair? What did you say? Who do you think you are? Who are you to interrupt when the old man is speaking? Yi Tian Xieqing did not expect anyone to refute him, and not be afraid of his half-step human immortal aura. More importantly, his aura was not as simple as a half-step human immortal. It was built on the foundation of the heaven-defying evil skill that he cultivated, and its most powerful ability was to intimidate people. And his opponent was just an early-stage manifestation young man. How could he not be angry? Chapter 458. Who do you think you are? You're already so old, yet you can't tell right from wrong. Have you been living in a dog's brain? Where did the rule come from that we can't use spiritual treasures? How retarded can you be to call a head-on battle a sneak attack? Look at your 20 disciples. Which one of you is a direct descendant of the Eastern Continent's demon sect? Fair? Are you even fit to talk about fairness? Chen Hao's words became even more domineering and arrogant. He stared at the other party with disdain and said, "If you want to be fair, sure. Kill these 20 idiots from the limitless demon palace for me, and use your direct descendants. We guarantee that we won't use any spiritual artifacts." Chen Hao's every word stunned the hundreds of thousands of cultivators present. Xiao Lingfeng and the rest of the immortal Dao cultivators were delighted, but everyone was also sweating. That was a half-step human immortal, an existence that could kill a peak late-stage manifestation expert with a wave of his hand, especially for a 1,000-year-old demon like Oda Xieching, who had been cultivating his whole life and had been stuck at the peak late-stage manifestation realm for countless years. Whether it was battle experience or secret techniques, he must have reached the peak of perfection. At this moment, he had comprehended the barrier and stepped into the half-step human immortal realm. How powerful would he be? Others might not be able to sense it, but Xiao Lingfeng, who was the first to bear the brunt of the pressure, knew very well how powerful this old man was. Presumptuous. Presumptuous. Oda Xieching's already strange face became even more twisted. He wanted to strangle Chen Hao to death immediately, but he couldn't. At this moment, if he attacked first, it would mean that he had breached the contract. What would that mean? The true outbreak of the Great War of the Immortals and Demons. Although the Immortal Dao only had about 40,000 people, as long as a portion of the experts fled to the demon realm, it would be enough to cause chaos. Although the Eastern Continent would definitely be in a worse state, and was destined to be divided between the demon realm and the demon realm, the consequences would still be unimaginable. If not for this, they would have already gone to war. Why would they force each other to sign a contract? Soul Fighter snorted in disdain. Originally, when this old man had appeared, he had hoped that he would show off his might. But he didn't expect that not only would he fail to show off his might, he would be angered half to death by Chen Hao's arrogance. Next, no one dares to come? After killing that disciple, Tantai Lian stood in the air, facing the bickering between Chen Hao and the old fart. She was not afraid at all. Her fighting spirit was still burning. At this time, seeing that the old fart was so angry at Chen Hao that he was at a loss for words, she pointed her sword at Soul Fighter and the others and said, "What are you waiting for?" Soul Fighter looked at one of the disciples. They had already decided on the order of appearance. Originally, there was no pressure, but now there was Chen Hao, a guy who they didn't know how strong he was. In the beginning, these fellows who had not come into contact with Chen Hao did not take a creation stage cultivator seriously. However, at this moment, regardless of whether Chen Hao was a hothead or blindly confident, he was definitely not a simple person since he dared to challenge a half-step human immortal. Now that things have come to this, we have no way out. It's just a middle-grade spirit treasure. As long as you get close to her, you can wear her down with your strength. Don't give her a chance to launch a surprise attack. Fight steadily and surely. Even if you want to form your ultimate move, you have to do it as you fight. You can't use all your energy and true yuan to form your ultimate move. Go. Soul Fighter transmitted his voice. As the second disciple appeared, the battle began again. This time, Tantai Lian fought extremely hard as her opponent was prepared. Although she managed to kill her opponent in the end, she was severely injured and could not fight anymore. This made Soul Fighter and the others look smug and arrogant once again. However, on the side of the immortal path, Xiao Lingfeng and the others who knew the truth were not worried. Instead, they were looking forward to it. This was because Tantai Lian had only revealed her middle-grade spirit treasure combat boots from the beginning to the end. Vaguely, the crowd had guessed Chen Hao's purpose. It's your turn. After the demon path eliminated Tantai Lian, it was the demon path's turn according to their agreement. The 7 demon path disciples were all at the peak of the late-stage manifestation realm. They were legitimate disciples of the demon path, and the top geniuses of the Eastern Continent's demon path. However, at this moment, all of them looked solemn and fearful before the battle. Even the number 1 person of the 10 demon path sects did not expect the Eastern Continent's immortal path disciples to be so powerful. Tantai Lian, who was the first to appear, was definitely the weakest of the 5, but she had killed 2 demon path disciples. Furthermore, they were geniuses from the limitless demon palace. How could the demon path's geniuses compare? Their advantage in terms of cultivation level was nothing. If there were no accidents, the 7 of them would probably all end up dead. Upon hearing the words of the demon path's number 1 person, the 7 demon path disciples looked at him. The contract has been signed. There's no other way. You only need to go up and go through the motions. If you feel that something is amiss, immediately admit defeat. Anyway, our goal is to reap the benefits. It doesn't matter if we don't reap the benefits. The most important thing is to stay alive. Thank you, sect leader Hu. With the demon path's number 1 person's voice transmission, the 7 disciples' tightly knitted brows relaxed slightly. Who would be willing to go up and die knowing that they were no match for their opponent? Besides, they were still young. Seeing the opponent's character, Chen Hao changed his decision at the last minute. Originally, he arranged for Xia Yuyu to appear, but now he let Helian Wuxia appear. Chen Hao's task for Helian Wuxia was still to kill 2 limitless demon palace disciples. This meant that Helian Wuxia had to defeat all 7 demon path disciples before it was possible. This was something that Xia Yuyu could not do. Even if the 7 demon path disciples were relatively weak and were fishing in troubled waters, it would still consume a lot of energy in a situation where they could not fight to the death. But Helian Wuxia could. There was no other reason. Helian Wuxia, who had awakened the power of reincarnation and incorporated the mystery of reincarnation into every move, had a recovery speed that was not inferior to Chen Hao's. Her ability to fight for a long time was definitely the strongest among the 4 girls. Little Wu, you don't have to use all your strength to deal with the demon path disciples. They won't fight to the death with us. Just defeat them, and preserve your strength. When Helian Wuxia appeared, Chen Hao transmitted his voice. The truth was as Chen Hao expected. Trash, trash. You 7 demon path disciples can't even take down 1 person. You're all trash. Seeing that the demon path disciples were defeated one by one and none of them fought to the death, the number 1 demon path disciple was so angry that his teeth itched. Soul Fighter and the rest also had gloomy expressions. It's already good that we can participate in the battle. How can we be considered trash? We 7 disciples are all direct descendants of the demon path. How can we be compared to you? Such a difficult task, it's better for you to complete it. If you can't complete it, then you're really trash. Inf. The number 1 demon path disciple said disdainfully. When he saw Tantai Lian's battle, he did not have any thoughts. But now that he saw Helian Wuxia fighting 7 people in a row and was still calm and composed, as if nothing had happened, he faintly felt that something was wrong. He was a little regretful that he got involved in this muddy water. He regretted even more that when Xia Lingfeng asked for an exorbitant condition 3,000 years ago, he did not even think about it and agreed. Now if he lost, he would have to give up 20 million kilometers of land. Brother Mo, the few of them are very strong in fighting beyond their level. This time, I accepted your invitation to come here to help, but I don't want to lose my life. Just when everyone's gaze was on Soul Fighter and the rest, the disciple who was about to fight frowned and looked at Soul Fighter and said, "That's right. I don't want to die here. If I knew it was so dangerous, I wouldn't have come." This Helian Wuxia fought 7 people in a row. Although they are all trash, but look at her aura now. And that Chen Shui is even more troublesome, and the most troublesome one is Chen Hao. If this goes on, even if we win, I'm afraid more than 10 of us will die. Yes, Brother Mo, it's not that we don't want to help you, but we can't joke with our lives. Didn't that kid just say that we can fight a group battle? If it's a group battle, we will definitely be able to kill all of them with the least losses. Yes. Brother Mo, I will participate in the group battle. If you want me to fight now, I'm sorry, I don't want to die. If you insist, I'd rather admit defeat and deal with it. With one person taking the lead, the others immediately followed suit. Although Soul Fighter was talented and would definitely have amazing achievements in the future, who would be willing to be a stepping stone? It was just that because of Soul Fighter's ruthlessness, no one dared to be the first to say it. But now, after the disciple who was about to fight said it in front of everyone, they no longer had any scruples. Hearing everyone's words, Soul Fighter's expression became extremely ugly. He was vicious and merciless. In his eyes, everyone was just a tool to be used. Naturally, he was most willing to see these guys fight for their lives. But now, everyone's words made him understand that no one was an idiot. If they were really like the 7 disciples of the Demon Tao and didn't put in any effort, casually dealing with them and then admitting defeat, what could he do? Boom. Soul Fighter didn't say a word. He directly released a terrifying aura and flew into the air. Seeing this scene, Chen Hao's lips curled up slightly. Although his sharp senses sensed what the other party was talking about, he couldn't hear the voice transmission. Now that he saw Soul Fighter appear, how could Chen Hao not understand what was going on? Of course, he didn't think that Soul Fighter wanted to fight now. Before he appeared, even if you gave him 10 guts, he wouldn't dare. All this was within Chen Hao's expectations. But he didn't expect that after killing just 2, this bunch of gutless guys couldn't hold on anymore. Humph, Chen Hao, didn't you say you wanted a group battle? I'll agree to it now, so as not to waste time. Let's fight it out with the remaining people from both sides. Gee, I couldn't ask for more. But I'll say this first. Since it's a group battle, as long as one person from either side admits defeat, it's considered a loss. Do you understand what I mean? Chen Hao directly flew into the air and flew to Helian Wuxi's side. His eyes were full of provocation and disdain as he spoke. Don't worry. Today it's either you or me. Soul Fighter said confidently. After he finished speaking, he looked at the remaining 17 disciples and said, all of you listen carefully. No matter who it is, you have to persevere with me to the end. Otherwise, I'll be the first to kill you. No problem. With just the 4 of them, what do we have to fear if we join forces? Let's go. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, streams of flowing light flew over as fast as lightning. Soul Fighter took the lead. His whole body was full of violent aura and fighting spirit, surging out. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 459. Qi. Chen Hao, Helian Wuxi, Xia Yuyu, and Chen Shui. The 4 of them instantly flew to one place. Each of them was filled with fighting spirit, and the aura around their bodies violently soared. Facing Mo Wuxin's 18 people who were rushing over with monstrous auras, the 4 of them didn't have the slightest bit of fear. The battle was about to break out. Why did he summon his spirit treasure? Xiao Lingfeng and the others did not expect Chen Hao to agree to a group battle. What kind of concept was it to fight 18 people with 4 people? However, Xiao Lingfeng, Yuan Tairan, and the others who had seen Chen Hao's spirit treasure did not expect that the 4 of them did not summon their spirit treasure. Were they still hiding their strength at this moment? Nearly 1,000 feet away, Soul Fighter's 18 people emitted a terrifying fighting spirit and monstrous demonic aura that swept thousands of miles. 17 super geniuses at the peak of the late stage of the creation realm and Soul Fighter, who was more powerful than the peak of the late stage of the creation realm, burst out at the same time. How powerful was it? At this moment, the disciples representing Wuxia Immortal Palace, Demon Palace, and Monster Palace were all aghast. They had to admit that the genius disciples gathered by Soul Fighter were definitely more powerful than them. Not to mention the others, even Jiang Hai and Huang Wenshu's expressions became extremely solemn and worried. They understood why Chen Hao had not revealed his spirit treasure set until now. Naturally, it was for the battle with Wuxia Immortal Palace and Monster Palace. However, facing 18 people, especially the powerful Soul Fighter, the 4 of them could not form a powerful battle formation. How could they win? You guys kill outside. Qi. Seeing that they were only 1,000 feet away, Chen Hao suddenly transmitted his voice to the 3 girls. At the same time, his whole body was like a sharp sword, rushing toward the 18 people at a terrifying speed. The three girls were shocked. What is this guy doing? Is he courting death? Seeing this scene, everyone's eyes widened in surprise. In a chaotic battle, when there was a great disparity in numbers, the best way was for the four of them to work together and fight side by side. However, Chen Hao took the lead and rushed toward the 18 people. In everyone's eyes, this was simply a retard. Wasn't this asking for trouble? Come on, kill them for me. Soul Fighter was startled at first, but then he was overjoyed. Die. Die. Following Soul Fighter's words, the 18 people instantly burst into loud shouts, and one by one, they launched an incomparably powerful attack. The sword light seemed to interweave into a sword net that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. In a flash, it completely enveloped Chen Hao, who was rapidly flying over. Split. Just as the sword was about to reach him, Chen Hao's figure instantly split into 5. The 5 figures stopped in an instant and brandished their swords to attack. Boom, boom, boom. A terrifying explosion and devastating energy swept out in an instant. Just this momentum alone was enough to shock the hundreds of thousands of onlookers. Kill. Just at this moment, Chen Hao, Helian Wuxia, and Xia Yuyu also charged over. Although they were also shocked and didn't understand the purpose of Chen Hao's actions, they didn't go against Chen Hao's intentions in the slightest. They believed that since Chen Hao did this, he would naturally be able to bear it. Chen Shue's attack was the incomparably fierce platinum sky-splitting slash, which contained the will of the destruction sword Dao. Helian Wuxia stabbed out with her sword. It was as if a clear and cold full moon had risen in the sky, causing the surrounding thousands of square meters to seem to be enveloped in a layer of ice-cold frost. It was still the moonlight sword that Chen Hao had given her, but the degree of compatibility with her at this moment couldn't be compared to back then. Within the clear and cold sword light, it contained the most mysterious power of reincarnation between heaven and earth. Xia Yuyu's sword was the hidden attribute, the will of the heartless sword Dao. During the Eastern Continent's Immortal Dao Sect competition, she only used it twice at the very end. At this moment, her heartless sword Dao was actually a level higher than Chen Shue's destruction sword Dao. Her clear and beautiful eyes no longer contained any emotions. At this moment, the main firepower was concentrated on Chen Hao. However, although Chen Shui, Helian Wuxia, and Xia Yuyu were attacking from the periphery and displayed their strongest strength, it was impossible for them to succeed in one move. After all, none of the opponents were weak. Without a tough battle, it would be difficult to kill them. However, fuck. You pushed. Who pushed? Puff. 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 The 3 disciples who blocked Chen Shui, Helian Wuxia, and Xia Yuyu let out angry roars one by one. However, before they could finish, they stopped abruptly. 3 streaks of sword light pierced through the 3 people's foreheads, killing them instantly. The 3 people's eyes were filled with anger and surprise, but they were not looking at the 3 girls, but at their companions beside them. Endless resentment, endless frustration, and endless anger. The moment their consciousness disappeared, they were still thinking, "Why did you push me? Why?" They could obviously block the opponent's attack, but because of the sudden burst of energy fluctuations from the guy beside them, there was a deviation in their attack. In a battle between experts, the slightest difference could lead to a huge difference, which directly led to their death. Chen Shui, Helian Wuxia, and Xia Yuyu succeeded in one move, but they were not surprised. Instead, their eyes shone with deep confusion and surprise. What was going on? How could it be so easy to succeed? Fuck you. Do you know how to fight together? Don't affect me. Why are you squeezing me with your energy? You're obviously the one who's affecting me. Everyone saw an extremely comical scene. This was obviously a life and death battle, and it was a group battle, but 3 of Soul Fighter's 18 people were killed by the 3 girls in an instant. What was even more comical was that when the 3 people died, as well as now, a war of words broke out among Soul Fighter's group, and they were all cursing the people beside them. What was this called? It was like a group of mobs who had not undergone any coordination training. They fought together, but before they could even pose a threat to the enemy, they were already in disarray. Something's wrong, everyone, spread out. Initially, Soul Fighter Mo was also looking angrily at the disciples beside him. However, when he saw that everyone was doing the same thing, Soul Fighter Mo's expression became extremely fearful. They were all experts at the peak of the late stage of the manifestation realm. Although they had never worked together before, they were basically working together in a battle. How could everyone make mistakes? This was absolutely impossible. A bunch of idiots. You call yourselves geniuses of the limitless demon palace, but you're almost scared to death by me, right? You actually made a mistake when you attacked. Ha ha. Combine. Chun Hao's mocking laughter, filled with disdain, came out from the terrifying energy explosion. The 5 figures suddenly combined into one, and after breaking the first wave of the most terrifying joint attack, he violently pointed at Soul Fighter. No one knew that the 5 figures combined into one was still Chun Hao's doppelganger. His real body had long been hidden near Chen Shui, Helian Wuxia and Xiaoyu. After stepping into the blessed realm, his ability to restrain his aura and merge with all things in the world had an astonishing increase. Even if Soul Fighter had the God's Eye, he could not sense the existence of Chun Hao's real body. What was Chun Hao's real body doing? He was using the 1000 transformation profound art, which was most suitable for a chaotic battle. He was doing it very covertly and restrained. If Soul Fighter and the others could stop urging their energy and calm down to sense it, they would naturally be able to capture the profound 1000 transformation profound art. But at this moment, in the midst of a great battle, the energy was wreaking havoc, the monstrous devil Qi, and Chun Hao's doppelganger had deliberately simulated the 1000 transformation profound art's aura to conceal it, causing them to be unable to sense any abnormalities. They all thought that it was because of the suppression of the energy of the people around them, which led to the failure. Boom boom boom. In panic, Soul Fighter and the others faced the threat of death and crazily raised their energy to the peak state. Moreover, they quickly distanced themselves from each other. Layers of sword shadows, all kinds of profound and powerful attacks, blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Some people were covering for others, and some people were condensing their ultimate moves. The real peak battle had only officially begun at this moment. The 3 women were always on the periphery, not daring to enter the middle of Soul Fighter and the others, while Chun Hao arrogantly rushed into the crowd, killing left and right, constantly closing in on Soul Fighter. Puff puff. Every few minutes, someone would be beheaded. But the injuries that Chun Hao and the others suffered were also shocking. And this was after Chun Hao secretly used the 1000 transformation spell to slightly change the situation of the opponent's attacks. But Chun Hao and the others, who were bathed in blood, became more and more courageous as they fought. Soul Fighter and the others were more and more frightened. Kill 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 for me. Soul Fighter roared crazily. At least half of the injuries that Chun Hao and the others suffered were caused by this guy's attacks. It had to be said that Soul Fighter's strength was indeed incomparably strong. Although the opponent's numbers were decreasing, the situation was becoming more and more unfavorable for Chun Hao and the others. Xiao Lingfeng and the others from the Immortal Dao sect were incomparably nervous, and even more puzzled. At this point, why did Chun Hao and the others not use their full set of spirit treasures, and were bitterly holding on, in just over 10 minutes, whether it was spirit or inner yuan? Everyone could see that Chun Hao and the others had consumed a lot of energy. It looked like they would not be able to hold on for much longer, and would be killed by the opponent. Boss is so insidious and so hateful. Huang Wenxu gazed at Chun Hao, who was fighting, and there was no trace of worry on his face. Instead, there was a trace of excitement as he transmitted his voice to Jiang Hai. Yes, the 3 sisters-in-law are also ruthless. It's not easy to pretend to be like this, and they are seriously injured. It seems that boss can no longer tolerate Soul Fighter and the other disciples of Limitless Demon Palace. This time, none of them will be able to leave the Eastern continent alive. Of course. But I don't think the chaos at the beginning was because Soul Fighter and the others were too stupid. It must be boss's doing. Seeing that there were only 7 people left around him, and that each and every one of them was gathering towards him with fear and unwillingness, Soul Fighter knew that he could not wait any longer. With a long howl that resounded through the heavens and earth, Demon Qi suddenly surged out from his body. His howl was mournful, as if he was enduring endless pain and torment. His handsome face twisted with jealousy, and in an instant, A pitch-black tentacle emerged from between his eyebrows. Every tentacle contained a monstrous evil aura and endless mysteries. Puff, 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 puff. A series of miserable screams suddenly erupted. What shocked everyone was that the black tentacles that came out from between Soul Fighter's eyebrows directly penetrated the foreheads of the 7 people around him. Chapter 460. No one had expected Soul Fighter to be so cold-blooded, heartless, and cruel. At that moment, the 7 men's eyes were filled with fear, pain, and boundless anger. They wanted to struggle, they wanted to resist, they wanted to curse, but it was too late. Who would have thought that Wuxia would make a move on them? If they were even a little bit prepared, their souls and wills would not have been restrained and their bodies controlled by Soul Fighter. The terrifying devouring power invaded the depths of their souls and controlled their bodies and souls. The only thing they could feel was boundless pain and the rapid destruction of their wills. In an instant, the 7 people's pupils lost focus. Their bodies trembled violently and shrank. Their life force, true essence, chi, and spirit were all being devoured by the black tentacles at a terrifying speed and surged into Soul Fighter's body. Boom! Soul Fighter's robe instantly swelled into a ball and exploded. His long hair raged in the wind, and his body spewed out waves of destructive and violent energy. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions began to spread from Soul Fighter's body in all directions. The space between heaven and earth seemed to be unable to withstand such a violent energy, causing terrifying spatial explosions. Dark spatial cracks appeared, causing hundreds of thousands of people to cry out in alarm. In the blink of an eye, the 7-peak late manifestation stage disciples who had been drained of their energy were directly turned into dust. And Soul Fighter, who had cruelly used the devil sex devouring technique on his 7 companions, his aura soared to an extremely terrifying level. Ha ha ha. Boom boom boom. Soul Fighter looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. With his laughter, the void rumbled, and the world shook. All the cultivators within a radius of thousands of miles could not bear this kind of pressure. One by one, they hurriedly activated their protective Zhenyuan. Xia Lingfeng and the other masters of the 3 forces who were watching from a close distance could not help but retreat one after another. Half-step human immortal. No, beyond that. He's close to a human immortal. How is this possible? What kind of technique is this? At this moment, even the half-step human immortal Noda Xieqing revealed an extremely shocked expression. His eyes were filled with fear and passion as he looked at Soul Fighter. Chen Hao was also extremely shocked in his heart. He suddenly sent out 3 rays of energy to envelop Chen Shui, Helian Wuzi and Xia Yuyu, blocking in front of the 3 of them. Chen Hao could clearly sense that Soul Fighter's strength and aura had surpassed that of a half-step human immortal. He was even stronger than the half-step human immortal old dog. It's useless. There is only life and death in this battle. All of you must die. Ha ha. You forced my hand 800 years. I burned 800 years of my lifespan. Ha ha. You forced me to do this. I will make you wish you were dead. Ha 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 ha. Soul Fighter said in a deranged manner. His voice was filled with boundless hatred and sorrow. Yes, it was solemn and moving. Burning 800 years of his lifespan had almost exhausted his life force. However, compared to the backlash of using this secret technique, it was insignificant. After all, with his talent, he only needed a few more years to break through to the human immortal stage and gain a long lifespan again. The real fatal thing was that the backlash of using this secret technique would cause irreparable damage to his soul. It would directly affect the speed of his cultivation in the future. He might not even be able to break through to the human immortal stage. This was the real reason why he was helpless. If he could not break through to the human immortal stage, how many more years could he live? However, Chen Hao's strength had forced him to this step. He could only watch as the people around him fell one by one. Although they were already seriously injured, they were still fighting bravely. He knew that he could not rely on luck anymore. Otherwise, he would face the end of his life. Soul Fighter was in the air, laughing maniacally as he walked step by step towards Chen Hao. With every step he took, the surrounding space began to explode. He stared coldly at Chen Hao. Aha! Are you afraid? I am now infinitely close to the human immortal stage. Human immortal stage. Even an ordinary human immortal stage is useless in front of me. Haha. Do you want to admit defeat? It's useless to admit defeat. No one can stop me from killing you. Ha ha ha. Don't worry, I will let you watch your beloved women die in my hands. Not only will I kill them, but I will also strip them and let hundreds of thousands of people here enjoy their naked bodies. Ha ha ha. It's a pity that there are too many people here. Otherwise, I wouldn't mind putting on a show in front of you. Shut up. Boom. Soul Fighter's increasingly vicious and shameless words made Chen Hao stop hesitating. In everyone's opinion, Chen Hao's silence was because he was afraid. Even Soul Fighter thought so. But what was the truth? Chen Hao was just hesitating whether to expose his real strength. Once exposed, the following battle with the limitless Demon Palace and the Demon Palace would not be able to achieve the expected results. This was also the reason why he, Chen Shui, Helian Wuxia, and Xiao Yu did not use the middle-grade spiritual treasure set. They would rather be seriously injured. But at this moment, Chen Hao had no choice but to expose himself. Soul Fighter was able to use such a powerful and abnormal secret method, which was completely beyond his expectations and control. With Chen Hao's thunderous roar, a bright seven-colored light rose from his body. His seven-colored boots spurted out two shockwaves that were thousands of feet long. His whole body rushed like a cannonball toward Soul Fighter, who was enjoying the pleasure of hunting. Chen Shui, Helian Wuxia, and Xiao Yu's bodies simultaneously emitted resplendent rays of light, but they didn't advance. Instead, they retreated at top speed until they reached the edge of the intersection of the three realms' heavenly rivers. Only then did they stop with nervous expressions. They knew that the battle between Chen Hao and Soul Fighter at this moment was far beyond what they could bear. They could not help at all. Spiritual treasure set? So this is your trump card? Ha ha. Soul Fighter said disdainfully. He was still laughing wildly. But in his heart, he secretly rejoiced that he was wise and powerful. If he had not decisively used the secret method, he was afraid that he would have really died. But now, with his strength comparable to the human celestial stage, the middle-grade spiritual treasure set was nothing. In the face of absolute power, any spiritual treasure was just a worldly object, which could not withstand a single blow. Get out of here. Boom. Soul Fighter violently slapped out his palm. He did not even use his sword. Since he had said so, how could he let Chen Hao die first? This secret method lasted for 15 minutes. In his opinion, it was enough time for him to humiliate Chen Hao to the extreme before he died. Only in this way could he vent the boundless hatred in his heart. Thousand changes Xian force condense. Boom. Chen Hao, who was rushing toward Soul Fighter like a cannonball, saw the big hand that Soul Fighter had sent out. In an instant his whole body surged with a mysterious aura. The energy within thousands of feet suddenly showed a scene of a group of demons dancing wildly, with Chen Hao as the core, including Soul Fighter. Field? Thousands of feet of field? Hundreds of thousands of onlookers saw the scene that suddenly appeared in the void. With Chen Hao as the core, it seemed to be an independent space from heaven and earth. Their eyes widened in horror. If that was not a field, then what was it? Domain was a powerful innate ability, and it was something that all cultivators yearned for even in their dreams. Field had nothing to do with one's realm. Although the higher the realm, the higher the probability of activating the field talent, and the more cultivators who could control the field. But the premise was that one had to have the field talent. Just like Fujikawa, who Chen Hao and Chen Shui met in the ancient Dark Wind Cave. Fujikawa was the only cultivator Chen Hao had met who could control the field talent. Break for me. Rumble. Soul Fighter sensed that his power was pulled away by a mysterious aura, and deviated from Chen Hao's body. He frowned slightly. In an instant he determined that Chen Hao, this abnormal guy, had mastered the field talent. However, he was only slightly surprised. Although he knew that his power had deviated from Chen Hao's, he did not stop. Instead, he suddenly urged his palm to become even more violent. The terrible explosion passed through thousands of meters, and tore the endless void. It was not until the black hole-like crack swallowed all the energy that it disappeared. However, at this moment, Whether it was Soul Fighter or the onlookers, they were all surprised and puzzled. How is this possible? It obviously penetrated the field talent. How can it still exist? Soul Fighter felt that his body was a little out of control. If his strength was not close to the human immortal stage at this moment, he was afraid that he would have lost control. This was absolutely impossible. After all, once the field talent was broken by absolute power, it would explode and cease to exist. And the cultivator who was mentally connected to the field talent would be seriously injured. But at this moment, Chen Hao's field talent had obviously been broken by Soul Fighter's violent palm, but the power of the field talent still existed. Moreover, Chen Hao, who was flying rapidly, was not affected at all. How was this possible? The hundreds of thousands of onlookers did not feel Soul Fighter's body, but they could see that the independent field talent still existed, and was not destroyed by Soul Fighter's penetrating energy. It was a long story, but in fact it was just a flash of lightning. Die for me. Seeing Chen Hao's terrifying sword attack, Soul Fighter knew that it was absolutely impossible to trample on Chen Shui and the other two. Chi 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 chi. In an instant, countless terrifying beams of sword light flew towards Chen Hao. Even though he was restricted by Chen Hao's Xian field, the feeling of power brought about by the forceful increase in his cultivation level did not cause his confidence to swell. Furthermore, in this short moment, he had already sensed the direction of the Xian field. Therefore, he was absolutely confident that he could kill Chen Hao with his sword. But, idiot, I want to see who's going to die. Chen Hao's cold and arrogant voice caused Mo Wuxia's mind to be greatly alarmed. The dozens of sword lights that he had shot out originally contained the power to resist Chen Hao's profound energy field, but the moment they were about to reach him, that mysterious power suddenly reversed, causing all the sword lights that he had shot out to deviate at an even faster speed in the opposite direction from where they were originally supposed to be. The power he had sent out to resist Chen Hao's field talent had instead become the power to change the direction of his attack. Chapter 461. Qi. When Chen Hao was only 1,000 feet away from Soul Fighter, he suddenly twisted his body and stabbed forward with his sword. The seven-colored sword light was condensed to the extreme, containing all kinds of mysterious auras and destructive sword intent. Boom. Soul Fighter, who was in shock, waved his sword the moment the sword reached him. The absolute power of the human immortal realm shattered Chen Hao's attack without any suspense. However, even though he looked relaxed, he was actually drenched in cold sweat. That was because he had launched a large-scale attack at close range. If not for that, the direction of the energy he had launched would definitely have been changed by the strange and ever-changing force field. At this time, Soul Fighter was finally a little worried. 15 minutes. I only have 15 minutes. No matter what, I have to kill this boy and the 3 girls in a few minutes. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. I have to get close. Qi. Soul Fighter suddenly rushed towards Chen Hao with his sword. He did not even launch an attack. He knew very well that an attack from 1,000 feet away would be a waste of energy. Only in close combat could he reduce the effect of Chen Hao's mysterious force field to the minimum. Although that also meant the most dangerous. Did he have a way out at this moment? Ah. Are you afraid? At this moment, Chen Hao let out a wild laugh. When they saw Soul Fighter's figure rushing towards them, everyone thought that Chen Hao would rush towards him. After all, Chen Hao had not been afraid of death, and looked like he was going to fight Soul Fighter to the death. But at this moment, not only did Chen Hao not approach Soul Fighter, he actually moved away from him. Don't think that I don't know what kind of evil skill you're using. It's nothing more than an evil side branch of the great devouring skill of the 3,000 great ways. How long can you last? 15 minutes at most? Aha. The evil you bring upon yourself is the hardest to bear. Who will suffer a fate worse than death? We'll know the result soon. What? How do you know? Soul Fighter's body flew quickly, twisting and turning. Although he was still chasing Chen Hao, he was more or less like a headless fly. Just this alone was enough to make him incomparably terrified. No matter what, he had never imagined that Chen Hao's force field would be so profound. It was ever-changing and had no pattern to speak of. If it wasn't for the fact that his absolute strength was much stronger than Chen Hao's, he would probably have become a toy for Chen Hao to play with. Chen Hao could toss him around and play with him however he wanted. But now, Chen Hao had actually pointed out the origin of his secret technique. This was something he had obtained by chance when he was at the late-stage primordial spirit realm, during a training trip arranged by the Limitless Demon Palace on an extraterrestrial desolate star. He had obtained one of the most powerful ultimate techniques of the 3000 Great Tao, the Great Devouring Technique. It was also because of the orthodox practice of the Great Devouring skill that he was able to improve much faster than Jiang Hai and Huang Wenxiu, and reach the Blessed Realm in advance. However, it was a pity that he was only able to learn a little bit of the Great Devouring Technique that he had been practicing. Today, he was forced to use the Great Devouring Technique by burning his lifespan as he was forced to do so. As for how severe the consequences were, there were detailed records in the cultivation technique. But he still activated it. The biggest drawback was that there was a time limit. However, at this moment, Chen Hao had actually pointed it out. Are you surprised? I also know that after 15 minutes, you will be like a half-dead dog. Not only will your soul be severely injured, but all your true essence will also dissipate. To put it bluntly, although you won't lose your life, you will be a good-for-nothing. The genius you once were is no longer a genius. Haha. I really want to see what kind of torture a heartless scum like you, who treats his own people so cruelly and mercilessly, will receive after you become a good-for-nothing. It must be very exciting, right? Chen Hao, whose body was shining with a 7-colored light, maintained a constant distance from Soul Fighter like a bolt of lightning. On his handsome face, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, filled with an evil charm and arrogance. It's a pity that they won't have the chance, because I will personally cut off your dog head. Your primordial spirit will be destroyed. Impossible. Impossible, so what if it's 15 minutes? I am now a human immortal. Human immortal, die. I want you to die. Soul Fighter went completely crazy. Chen Hao's words were like a magic spell that shook people's hearts. Not only did he expose the secret technique that Soul Fighter had used, he also clearly stated the consequences of the secret technique. Geniuses were no longer geniuses. What would happen to a person like him, who had the heart of a wolf and lungs of a dog, who didn't have the slightest bit of humanity? Just from the fact that he had devoured 7 of his companions, who were at the peak of the late stage of manifestation stage, one could imagine the consequences. These 7 people were also geniuses. They were also outstanding figures in the various halls of Limitless Demon Palace. Not to mention that there were senior brothers and sisters among the 40 disciples of Limitless Demon Palace. Even if there weren't, after today, Soul Fighter's fate would be very miserable. This was all because Chen Hao had exposed his secret. If the crowd didn't know, they would be shocked by his powerful talent and abnormal secret technique. Perhaps they would continue to curry favor with him. But now that they knew, it was impossible. Boom boom boom, Soul Fighter attacked Chen Hao continuously without caring about the cost. Unfortunately, the more agitated he was, the faster his energy was consumed. Chen Hao calmly maintained his distance and dodged his attacks. If Soul Fighter hadn't lost his mind, he would have definitely stopped. But now, he was like a resentful woman who had been molested by Chen Hao. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was to kill Chen Hao as fast as he could. Kill him. The expressions of the cultivators in the Devil World and Demon World changed. Especially some ambitious sect leaders. What did this scene mean? It meant that Soul Fighter was going to lose. The Devil World and Demon World were going to lose. It meant that the territory of 20 million Li would become the territory of the Immortal Tao. The Fortune Gate, Sky Sword Sect, and Floating Mist sect leaders who had colluded with the Devil World were even more embarrassed. Their bodies began to tremble, and they were almost scared to death. Even in their dreams, they didn't expect Chen Hao and the others to be so powerful. With just 5 people, they were able to turn the tide. What kind of concept was this? Once the Devil World lost this battle, according to the agreement, all the people who had betrayed the 3 sects would become the captives of the Immortal Tao. How bad would the consequences be? Boom. At this time, the half-step human immortal Noda Xieching suddenly snorted coldly. Without any warning, he soared into the sky. Monstrous demonic chi surged towards Chen Hao. Seeing that Soul Fighter was struggling like a headless fly, the Devil World and Demon World had already realized the outcome. Everyone in the Devil World looked at the old monster notice Yeqing. Countless people even sent out messages of inquiry, because they couldn't afford to lose. Yes, at this moment, not only had they lost all their face, they couldn't accept the loss of 20 million li of territory. One had to know that 20 million li of territory was moving along the Three Realms galaxy into their territory. How many square kilometers was that? How many sects were involved in it? How many resources would disappear? Since they had already lost all their face, they might as well shed all pretense of cordiality and shamelessly start a war between the immortal Dao, Demon Dao, and Demon Dao. This would mean that the Eastern continent would be reshuffled and realigned. However, everyone was most afraid of Chen Hao. Once the war broke out, they had to kill Chen Hao first. Otherwise, with such a freak, who could stop him even if he barged into the Devil World and Demon World? Who could kill him? No one. That would be everyone's nightmare. Especially since Chen Hao was still very young. He was only in the early stage of the manifestation realm. His cultivation would improve in a short period of time. Because of this, everyone looked at Notice Yeqing. Because only he had the ability to kill Chen Hao. As long as Chen Hao was killed, although the others were still a big threat, they wouldn't be afraid. After some time, they would definitely be able to kill all the experts of the Immortal Dao and completely erase the Immortal Dao from the Eastern continent. Clang clang clang. Boom boom boom. As Notice Yeqing stood up, the Demon Dao cultivators unsheathed their swords. Their auras surged out violently. However, before they received the order to attack, they could only hold back. Old man, you dare to go against the contract? Chen Hao's cold voice rang out. The thing he was most worried about had happened. Originally, the probability of it happening was very small, because he was confident that he could use his own strength to deter the experts of the Demon Dao and Demon Dao. However, Notice Yeqing's unexpected appearance had increased the probability of a war breaking out countless times. Contract? The old man has stepped into the half-step human immortal realm. He has already surpassed the boundaries of the Eastern continent's cultivation world. What does your contract have to do with the old man? If you dare to disrespect the old man will take your dog life. Notice Yeqing took a step forward. His demonic aura filled the sky as he stared at Chen Hao from afar. Boom boom boom. Clang clang clang. Xiao Lingfeng and the rest of the Immortal Dao cultivators were shocked at this moment. They rushed up to the sky. The situation had turned into a state of mutual hostility. There was no doubt that once Notice Yeqing made his move, the Immortal Demon War would break out. Back off. At this moment, Chen Hao turned around and shouted at Xiao Lingfeng and the rest. Then he looked coldly at Notice Yeqing and said, "Old dog, your reason is very stupid. Don't you want to kill me and trigger the Immortal Demon War? Ha ha ha." Whoosh. Bang. The moment Chen Hao spoke, the rainbow battle boots suddenly spat out two terrifying shockwaves. His figure once again shot out like a cannonball, not giving anyone any time to react. He rushed towards Mo Wuxin, who was already completely under the control of the profound energy field. Stretching out his hand, he viciously grabbed Mo Wuxin's throat. "I'll fulfill your wish. You'll become a dead dog like him." Boom boom boom. Mo Wuxin's eyes bulged and he struggled madly. The remaining energy exploded around Chen Hao. Even though it was still terrifying to most of the fighters at the peak of the later stage of Blessed Realm, Chen Hao, who shone with a seven-colored light, looked like a god. He was not affected at all. This little bit of energy could not even break through his spiritual treasure set. Bang. His left hand grabbed Mo Wuxin's throat as if he was holding a chicken. His right hand punched out, and Mo Wuxin's arm and shoulder turned into a pile of flesh and blood. Chapter 462. Bang. 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 After 3 consecutive sounds, Soul Fighter's arms and legs disappeared. He became a meatball with only his head and chest left. Under the terrifying pain, Soul Fighter wanted to scream, But his veins were bulging on his face and his eyeballs were about to pop out. Yet he couldn't make a sound. Under the effect of Chen Hao's mysterious energy, this pain wasn't as simple as a broken arm or a broken leg. This was a pain that shook his soul. It was the most realistic portrayal of being unable to live and unable to die. This bloody and cruel scene was 100 or 1,000 times more horrible than Chen Hao smashing Soul Fighter into pieces with one punch. Everyone present could see that Soul Fighter's primordial spirit was forced to his head by Chen Hao. This was the cruelest torture. But it wasn't over yet. Chen Hao used his right hand to cut Soul Fighter's upper body like a sharp blade. Pieces of flesh flew out from Soul Fighter's body. What was cutting him into pieces? This was it. Condense. Rumble. When Soul Fighter's head was left hanging in the air by Chen Hao's bone-chilling voice rang out. Immediately, Soul Fighter's primordial spirit appeared in front of everyone. It seemed to be struggling and howling, but it couldn't make any sound. It turned into a wisp of green smoke, and was held in Chen Hao's hand. Old dog, didn't you want to kill me? I'll give you a chance. Swish. Chen Hao waved his hand and sent out a ray of energy. The 1,000 transformation Xian force field disappeared instantly. After a fierce battle with an opponent at the human celestial stage, his aura didn't weaken at all. Instead, it became more powerful. Even though it was broad daylight, his pitch-black eyes were still dazzling like stars. They were fierce and domineering, and his peerlessly handsome and angular face was terrifyingly cold. Plus, he had killed Soul Fighter in a bloody and cruel way. At this moment, everyone was scared out of their wits. Hundreds of thousands of people were silent. Even Evil Spirit Noda's face became extremely embarrassed. No one had thought that Chen Hao was actually powerful to such an extent. Noda Xieqing had wanted to take advantage of the battle between Chen Hao and Soul Fighter to make his move. That way he would have a high chance of killing Chen Hao. As long as Chen Hao died, even if the great war between immortals and demons broke out, it wouldn't be a threat to most of the experts. So what if they lost some people? As long as his foundation remained intact, he would be able to recover his vitality in a few years. Furthermore, after obtaining the territory and resources of the immortal path, his speed of development would be even faster. With luck, his chances of overcoming the half-immortal heaven punishment would increase exponentially, because he was the mastermind. But he didn't expect that just as he was about to make a move, Chen Hao would kill the struggling Soul Fighter without any hesitation. It would have been fine if he had just killed him, but he had displayed such insufferably powerful strength. One had to know that although Soul Fighter was in a frenzy and had used up a lot of his energy, how much energy could he have used to struggle? At the very least, Noda Xieqing was sure that he couldn't have done it as easily as Chen Hao. Of course, in his opinion, Chen Hao must have made use of that powerful spiritual treasure set. But who dared to say that possessing a spiritual treasure wasn't a form of strength? Why are you afraid? Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. Don't think that the immortal path is easy to bully. When Chen Hao said this, he suddenly disappeared. Even his aura disappeared completely, leaving no trace behind. However, when his voice resounded in everyone's ears again in an instant, he was already above the army of several 100,000 people from the demon world. So what if you have hundreds of thousands of people? In my eyes, you're all ants. Swoosh. Swoosh. At the same time, just as everyone's hair stood on end, 3 rainbow-colored hands suddenly tore through the void. Ah ah ah! 3 terrified cries erupted from the mouths of the Yuan Gate, Sky Sword Sect and Floating Mist Sect. These 3 fellows had long been frightened out of their wits. Like dead dogs, they were imprisoned in Chen Hao's hands. Hundreds of thousands of demons, but no one dared to stop him. No one could stop him. Oda Xieqing's expression changed greatly. He was terrified and ashamed to the extreme. Such a monster. He actually wanted to kill him. Was that even possible? The moment Chen Hao disappeared, with his cultivation, he couldn't even sense a trace of his aura. So what if his combat power was stronger than Chen Hao's? Not to mention that Chen Hao's targets were 3 immortal Dao experts who had colluded with the demon sect. Even if Chen Hao launched a sneak attack on him, he wouldn't be able to avoid it. Coming without a shadow, leaving without a trace, appearing and disappearing unpredictably. His combat power was monstrous. What shocked everyone even more was that an extremely powerful spiritual perception appeared in everyone's hearts at the same time. Everyone felt that under this spiritual perception, they had become completely naked. There were no more secrets to speak of. Even if hundreds of millions of lives in the immortal Dao die, I can still make all of you suffer a fate worse than death. Want to violate the contract? I'd like to see who dares to do so. Let me go, let me go. I promise to be loyal to the immortal Dao from now on. I won't betray it again. I don't want to die. Chen Hao, I'll be your slave. I'm willing to fully support the star-picking sect to become the #1 immortal Dao sect. Please let me go. I was wrong, I was wrong. Please let me go. Under the terrifying pressure of Chen Hao's 3 enormous hands, the Origin sect, Sky Sword sect, and Floating Mist sect cultivators begged for mercy in agony. Chi, chi, chi. 3 streams of energy shot out from Chen Hao's hands and merged into the 3 enormous hands in an instant. Incomparably shrill screams erupted from their mouths. I beg you. Let me die. Give me a quick death. Even if my body and soul are destroyed. I beg you. Just hearing those extremely painful screams sent chills down everyone's spine and made them break out in cold sweat. What kind of pain did these great figures, who had once stood at the pinnacle of the immortal Tao in the Eastern continent, have to go through for them to utter such words in front of everyone? It was obvious that the pain they were enduring was far beyond anyone's imagination. This was exactly what Chen Hao had said. They would rather die than live. Don't worry, the heavens are benevolent. I won't kill you. At most, I'll destroy your stinky skins. With your cultivation, you should be able to last for 100 years. I'm a very compassionate person. If you can't hold on, I'll treat your soul injuries regularly. Break. Rumble. As Chen Hao's chilling voice rang out, the 3 cultivators' bodies instantly exploded into a bloody mist. Their primordial spirits struggled with all their might to transform into 3 wisps of green smoke that were sucked into Chen Hao's palms. They followed in Soul Fighter's footsteps. Nearly 40,000 people from the Immortal Dao sect stared at Chen Hao, who single-handedly charged into the enemy's ranks and captured the 3 culprits who had colluded with the demon world. No one dared to stop him. They clenched their fists tightly, their blood boiling with excitement. As for the hundreds of thousands of soldiers from the Demon Dao and Yao Dao sect, they felt an eerie chill and incomparable fear. Who could stop such a person? We'll record the names of the others from the Origin Gate, Heavenly Sword sect and Floating Mist sect. When the time comes, we'll hand them over together. As Chen Hao spoke, his cold and arrogant gaze landed on the 40 limitless Demon Palace disciples, who had long since turned pale with fright. This was especially true for the disciples from Broken Heart Hall who had followed Soul Fighter to hunt down Chen Hao and the others. They were so scared that they almost pissed their pants. As for the Creation Realm experts from the Origin Gate, Heavenly Sword sect, and Floating Mist sect, they were all trembling violently. Howls of despair suddenly erupted. Boom, boom, boom. There were actually quite a few people who self-destructed their primordial spirits at the same time, their souls scattering. Escape. Once the contract took effect, none of them would be able to escape. The demon world, the immortal world, and the Yao world, there would be no place for them to stand. When they thought of the fates of the 3 great sect masters, these brave warriors chose to self-destruct without any hesitation. Senior Chen, we were forced to do this. We had no choice. Our lives are in the hands of the sect master. Otherwise, why would we do such a thing? We had no choice. We really had no choice. There were also some Creation Realm experts present who spoke loudly to the godlike Chen Hao in fear. Whether you were forced or not, Sect Master Xia and the others will come to the conclusion. Now the wagered battle of the Eastern Continent's cultivation world is over. Disciples of the limitless Demon Palace, it's your turn now. Chen Hao said coldly. As he spoke, his cold gaze landed on the 40 limitless Demon Palace disciples. Chen Shui, Helian Wuzi Xia Yuyu, the injured Tantai Lian, as well as Jiang Hai, Huang Wenxiu, and the other 40 limitless Immortal Palace disciples. At this moment, without any hesitation, Each and every one of them flew towards the center of the three realms Milky Way. We, the Demon Tao, admit defeat. We are willing to compensate. The 40 Limitless Demon Palace disciples were already scared out of their wits. How could they still dare to fight? When the contract was signed, it was said that all the disciples of the three great palaces would fight. Originally, they did not know that Chen Hao, this monster, would come. They also did not expect that Chen Shui and the other three would still be able to fight after the wagered battle. How could they fight now? Not to mention Chen Shui and the other three. Even if Chen Hao participated, they would not have any chance of winning. They would just be courting death. The only fortunate thing was that they did not sign a life and death battle. If they lost, they would only have to agree to one condition, which was to hand over a few disciples of the Limitless Demon Palace's Broken Heart Hall and compensate. This had nothing to do with them. How could they fight? There is no need for compensation. I don't care about your little wealth. Boom boom boom. Chi chi chi. Ah ah ah. When Chen Hao looked at the Limitless Demon Palace disciples, dozens of people attacked at the same time before he could say anything. In an instant, they took down the few disciples beside him. Chen Hao, the turmoil in the Eastern continent was completely caused by Soul Fighter of the Broken Heart Hall, and these people. We admit defeat for this battle. Every injustice has its perpetrator, every debt has its debtor. You can settle the score with them. We guarantee that the demon world will immediately fulfill the contract of the Eastern continent's cultivation world. Within 3 days, the handover will be completed. We will cooperate with the Immortal Tao to complete the reconstruction of the three realms boundary and restore the Eastern continent to its normal state. The leader of the 40 people stared at Chen Hao as he spoke. Although his voice was crisp and clear, his trembling hands revealed the nervousness in his heart at this moment. Chapter 463. These are the people you want. Send them over. Seeing that Chen Hao still did not say anything, the disciple became even more nervous. His voice trembled as he spoke. His heart was filled with regret. He had been bewitched by Soul Fighter and wanted to make a great contribution to the Limitless Demon Palace in the Eastern continent. Now, not only did he not make a great contribution, his life was in danger. Chi chi chi. When more than 10 disciples brought the Broken Heart Palace's disciples to Chen Hao did not draw his sword. Instead, he waved his hand and sent out a few sharp sword lights, which directly pierced their hearts. Following their screams, their primordial spirits were taken into Chen Hao's hands. From the beginning to the end, Chen Hao's expression did not change at all. It was as if he was doing something insignificant. He was cold, ruthless, and overbearing. Central Continent, as long as you come at me, I welcome you to challenge me. However, if you use despicable means like Soul Fighter, don't blame me for being merciless. You should be glad that I came back in time. Otherwise, the result would not be so simple. Chen Hao said coldly. Then he looked at Xia Lingfeng and said, Clan Master Xia, I'll leave the rest to you. Yes. Under Chen Hao's aura, Xia Lingfeng actually cupped his fists and replied respectfully, as if he was a subordinate. However, at this moment, whether it was Xia Lingfeng or the 40,000 people in the Immortal Path, no one felt that Xia Lingfeng's action was inappropriate. Who could turn the tide with the strength of a single person? Who could kill a half-step human immortal, as if he was killing a chicken when he was only at the initial stage of the manifestation realm? One man and one sword, in front of hundreds of thousands of manifestation realm experts, trampled 3 people who were once at the peak of the Immortal Path. Who could do it? Who could frighten the old farts who had not appeared for hundreds of years to the point that they did not even dare to fart? No one. However, Chen Hao did it. With absolute strength, absolute arrogance, and absolute coldness, he did it. One man deterred the 3 worlds of the Eastern continent. And he was just a young man in his 20s. Chen Hao led the 4 women and 40 disciples of the Limitless Immortal Palace and flew into the sky. Boss, you're amazing. Too powerful, huh? Brother Chen, I didn't expect you to be so strong. It's unbelievable. Even in the Central Continent, no one can compare. Thankfully, Brother Chen returned in time. Otherwise, the Immortal Tao would have suffered. That's right. Although the junior sisters are very strong, they can't change the outcome. Pooh! Ah! Just as everyone was tens of thousands of li away, and when they were certain that no one would be able to sense them, all of them started to greet Chen Hao excitedly. Chen Hao's expression seemed calm, and his aura didn't weaken in the slightest. However, to everyone's surprise, Chen Hao spurted out a mouthful of blood. His face instantly turned pale, and he staggered, almost falling from the sky. Chen Shui, who was beside him, grabbed him. What happened to you? How? The three girls also looked at Chen Hao in astonishment. At this moment, Helian Wuxi and Xia Yuyu were holding on to the injured Tantai Lian. Little Shui, support me. Before the three realms return to normal. Don't let anyone know that I'm heavily injured. Almost in the blink of an eye, Chen Hao spurted out a mouthful of essence blood. His life aura had actually weakened to a frightening extent, and his face was frighteningly pale. How? Chen Hao. Boss, don't scare us. The four girls, Jiang Hai, Huang Wenxiu, and the others' expressions changed greatly. No one had expected that Chen Hao, who seemed completely fine just a moment ago, would suddenly become so weak. Moreover, they could sense that Chen Hao's life aura was extremely weak. Support me, don't reveal any flaws, return to the star-picking sect first. After we return, announce that I've comprehended something, and need to go into seclusion immediately. Chen Hao's mouth was full of blood, and his voice was incomparably weak as he spoke intermittently. After he finished speaking, his pitch-black eyes were clearly open, but they had lost focus. Everyone's eyes widened in shock, and they were incomparably nervous. How could this be? How could this be? He was clearly fine. Could it be? Could it be that boss, he used a secret technique? Huang Wenxiu looked at Chen Shui and the others and said, Hiss. Chen Shui, who was holding on to Chen Hao, did not speak. She directly poured her energy into Chen Hao's body, and controlled his body. What made Chen Shui's heart stab with pain was that Chen Hao's body did not have the slightest bit of energy. His internal organs, and even every cell, were dried up like a thirsty desert, and only a wisp of life force remained. He must have used a secret technique. No wonder he was so strong. No wonder he was so strong. Almost in an instant, Chen Shui's eyes were filled with tears. She suddenly looked at the three anxious girls and said, Little Wu, let's hold on to him. This news must not be leaked in the slightest bit. Wait for the three realms barrier to reconstruct, and the teleportation array to be restored, and we will immediately return to the central continent. Mother and the others will definitely have a way. Junior sister Chen, what's the situation? Is it very serious? The dozens of disciples of Wuji Immortal Palace present were basically the disciples of Yunwei Palace. The strength that Chen Hao had shown had completely conquered them. In addition, senior immortal Yunwei respected and valued Chen Hao. At this moment, when she saw Chen Hao suddenly become like this, she was sincerely concerned from the bottom of her heart. Senior immortal Yunwei and my mother must have a way. Definitely, don't panic, stay calm. If the people of the demon realm and the demon realm know that he's in such a situation, he's really finished. Chen Shui suppressed the fear in her heart and said. Helian Wuxi let go of Tantai Lian, and quickly came to Chen Hao's side. The two of them held on to Chen Hao and poured energy into Chen Hao to maintain his body. They also emitted a fierce aura. Although it was not as strong as Chen Hao's own, it did not seem too abnormal. Chen Hao was only at the early stage of the creation realm. With the help of the spiritual treasure set, he could at most compete with ordinary half-step human immortals. However, it was not so easy to win. It was just easier to save his life. Mo Wuxin had burned his lifespan and performed the evil path's great devouring skill. He had absorbed the energy of 7 experts at the peak of the late stage of the Fate realm, and condensed it into his own body. His strength was infinitely close to the human celestial stage. Coupled with Mo Wuxin's extremely powerful talent, how could Chen Hao have won so easily? No one knew what Chen Hao, who seemed calm, arrogant, and insufferably arrogant, did at that time. He burned his lifespan. Soul Fighter burned 800 years of his lifespan, and Chen Hao was forced to do the same thing. It was the same great devouring skill, and the same evil shortcut that Soul Fighter used. The only difference was that he devoured the energy of the spiritual spring and countless spiritual herbs through the old god. Not only that, Chen Hao also used the old god's mental strength to deter the enemy for the first time. When he barged into the army of hundreds of thousands of people by himself, just by relying on his soul power, it was impossible for him to release such a huge pressure. Otherwise, if that old dog Otis Yeqing sensed anything strange, he would probably be killed on the spot. Moreover, the reason why he was so cold-blooded and cruel was to deter Notice Yeqing, and everyone from both the Demon Dao and the Demon Dao. Once Notice Yeqing saw any clues, the result could be imagined. How long could he last after burning 800 years of his lifespan? No matter how strong his talent and physical strength were, he could not last much longer than Soul Fighter. The pain that he had endured until now was unimaginable. He was almost at the end of his life. Even though he knew that his soul would be irreparably damaged, he still insisted on doing so. There was no other way. Only by doing so could Chen Shui, Helian Wuxi, Xia Yuyu, and Tantai Lian be safe. His younger brother, sister, brothers, and friends would be safe. Only then would the entire immortal Tao of the Eastern continent be safe. If he hadn't done that, he could have escaped. Moreover, he could have used his own strength to wreak havoc in the Eastern continent's Demon Realm and Demon Realm. He could have killed everyone involved in this incident. Could he save the lives of his family and friends? No. That was an outcome that Chen Hao did not want to see. Old God, you should stop Chen Hao. In Chen Hao's mind, the treasure-hunting sword spirit sensed Chen Hao's aura and said unhappily to the old god, "Stop? Why don't you stop him? Who can stop this kid from doing what he wants? I don't believe you can't stop him. Don't think I don't know that your current ability is not as simple as what you told Chen Hao. So what? If it was the previous masters, I would have stopped him. I would not have allowed his soul to suffer irreparable damage, but this time, I will not stop him." Why? Because the previous masters seemed perfect, but none of them were able to reach the end. I told you before that human emotions are the most powerful, mysterious power. Although the damage to the soul will cause it to become incomplete, his emotions will remain perfect. I can't tell if it's a blessing or a curse. From the beginning until now, the path he walked was chosen by himself. I decided not to interfere before, and I will not interfere now, and I will not interfere in the future. Moreover, it's not like there's no way to repair it. Although it's impossible to completely recover, at least the damage can be reduced to negligible levels. Damn. You said so much, you should have said so earlier. What method? Hearing the old god's last sentence, the treasure-hunting sword spirit could not help but curse at the powerful old god. In fact, after interacting with the old god, the treasure-hunting sword spirit realized that the old god was not as terrifying as it had imagined. At least, the treasure-hunting sword spirit was sure that the old god treated it well, and it was no longer as fearful as before. Even an idiot can think of the simplest and most direct method. Do you still need me to tell you? Cough cough. There are many ways to repair the damage to the soul. Alright. Anyway, it's none of our business. Even if it can't be repaired, with his power of comprehension and physical body, he'll be able to break through to the human celestial stage very soon. As his cultivation level increases, the damage to his soul will slowly recover. The so-called irreparable damage is only limited to a certain cultivation level. As long as he can continue to increase his cultivation level, there's nothing to worry about. Chapter 464. It was the same burning of lifespan and the same damage to the soul. But to Soul Fighter Mo, he was basically useless. Chen Hao, on the other hand, was different. His soul was originally a mutated fused soul. It was several times stronger than a cultivator of the same level. Even if it was damaged, it was still a dead camel. It was stronger than Soul Fighter Mo in his peak state. 4 hours later, Chen Hao and the others returned to the Zhaixing sect through the transportation array between the cities. The Zhaixing sect of today, under the auspices of Chen Hao, Helian Wuxia, Tantai Lian and many other rising geniuses, had undergone earth-shattering changes compared to a few years ago. It was shrouded in auspicious light, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was abundant. Although it was still far from the central mainland, it was already a top-level holy land for cultivation in the eastern mainland. In addition, Chen Hao's grandfather, Leng Kongya, had transferred a large amount of primordial crystal stones to the Zhaixing sect through the Chamber of Commerce. The Zhaixing sect had truly stepped into the ranks of powerful sections. The only thing they lacked was a little bit of foundation. Unfortunately, Chen Hao, who was deep in self-recovery, could not see it. However, at this moment, the entire Zhaixing sect was deserted. There was not even a single disciple guarding the door. In the entire Zhaixing sect, there were only 6 grand elders and more than 100 disciples who were close to Chen Hao, anxiously waiting for news. When Helian Wuxia used the sect's command medallion to activate the star-seizing sect's defensive formation, which was countless times stronger than before, the 6 grand elders immediately soared into the sky from the star-seizing peak, appearing before everyone as fast as lightning. Chen Hao, you're back? We've won, haven't we? The Grand Elder, who had once condensed his own grotto heaven for Chen Hao to enter to cultivate, asked nervously and excitedly when he saw Chen Hao, the 4 girls, and the 40 disciples of Wuji Immortal Palace. They were all clear about the situation of the bet. If they had not won, Chen Hao and the 4 girls would not have had a chance to return. However, what surprised them was that there did not seem to be any joy of victory on everyone's faces. Although they all looked calm, they could tell that everyone's expressions were forced. Seniors, we've won. During the battle, Chen Shui hesitated for a moment. Yet she didn't speak the truth in the end and said, he has comprehended something and has already immersed himself in a special state of cultivation. We have to send him back to the palace first. Ah, good, we won. It's good that we won. Grand Elder, I'll have to trouble you to arrange a place for my senior brothers and sisters to rest for the time being. Sectmaster and the others should be back in less than 3 days. Helian Wuxia said. Also, if Xiaoma and Chen Hao's younger brother and sister ask, tell them not to disturb Chen Hao for the time being. He needs some time. No problem. They're all at star-picking peak. Just don't tell them for now. The 6 grand elders faintly felt a bit strange, but since Chen Shui and Helian Wuxia said so, it wasn't good for them to ask anymore. After all, they were very familiar with Chen Hao's aura, at least in the past. But now, although Chen Hao's spirit seemed to be full, there was a faint feeling of incompatibility. Especially at a close distance, the 6 of them could feel that it seemed to be related to Chen Shui and Helian Wuxia. Jiang Hai and Huang Wenxiu also wanted to follow, but they still restrained themselves. They couldn't help even if they went over. Instead, they were like light bulbs, adding to the awkwardness. How is it? In Chen Hao's palace, when Chen Shui slowly withdrew her palms from Chen Hao's body, the 3 girls looked nervously at Chen Shui, who was dripping with fragrant sweat, and asked. Chen Shui shook her head with a grave expression and said, I can't sense any signs of recovery. He seems to have entered a deep sleep. In this situation, his soul must have suffered a serious injury, and he's once again immersed in this subconscious self-recovery state. We don't have to worry too much. His life force is no longer weakening, and seems to have stabilized. Then what should we do? Don't tell me we're just going to watch? Xia Yu frowned and said. Naturally we can't watch. Why don't you try? Yu, didn't you have that kind of dual cultivation energy with him in the ruins? And little Lian, your phoenix inheritance with him. If you can fuse with his soul, it should be able to help him recover. The injury on his soul. That kind of true dual cultivation is useful. When yin and yang converge, it's easiest to achieve soul fusion. Chen Shui braced herself and said a little embarrassedly. She was very clear on this point. The reason why her soul was so strong was because of the yin and yang fusion. Only, the difference was that her mother had forcefully used more than 100 years to condense the purest yang essence in the world for her, and not through dual cultivation. Seeing Xia Yu and Tantai Lian's slightly red faces and not speaking, Chen Shui could only say again, My intention is not for you to do that with him. After all, you and him should have had soul fusion before. Your soul and his soul, in a certain sense, already have a certain degree of compatibility. Right now, little Wu is displaying the cultivation technique that you guys had comprehended together. Maybe it can cause a trace of fluctuation. As long as he realizes it, it should be a little useful, right? Little Lian's Phoenix Nirvana should have a better effect. After all, you guys, let me do it. But you guys can't just watch. The more Chen Shui said, the more embarrassed she felt. Just as she was too embarrassed to continue, Tantai Lian said with a red face. Among the 4 of them, 3 were still virgins. Only Tantai Lian and Chen Hao had done it once. But after a few years, and under the circumstances that they had no choice, Tantai Lian's situation was not much better than the 3 of them. But under such circumstances, what was the point of continuing to be shy? Let me try first. Just at this moment, Helian Wuzi suddenly said, "You." Chen Shui and the other 2 looked at Helian Wuzi in astonishment. I didn't mean that. My soul has awakened the power of reincarnation. Master had once told me that the power of reincarnation is the most mysterious energy in the world. The more I awaken, the stronger my soul will be. The greatest use of the power of reincarnation is to nourish and strengthen the soul. I want to try and see if it's useful to him. Helian Wuzi's words immediately received unanimous agreement from the 3 of them. After all, although Tantai Lian had mustered up her courage, the awkwardness in her heart was undoubtedly quite serious. Especially when the 3 of them were aware of it. Although Chen Shui and Xia Yuyu were very supportive of Tantai Lian taking the initiative to appear, they more or less felt a little awkward in their hearts. This feeling was very subtle. It was like a snack shared by the 4 of them. No one was embarrassed to take the first bite, but if someone took the first bite, the others would also be unhappy. Hiss hiss hiss. Helian Wuzi directly replaced Chen Shui's position and sat cross-legged behind Chen Hao. Her palms gently pressed on Chen Hao's vital gate. She, who had already stepped into the creation realm, had a deeper understanding of the power of reincarnation. It was no longer like before when she could only activate the power of reincarnation when she used the ultimate technique. Now, she could control her own vital essence and naturally contain the power of reincarnation. As she activated her vital essence, a mysterious aura instantly filled the entire room. Helian Wuzi activated her own energy that contained the power of reincarnation and merged it into Chen Hao's body bit by bit. Her mind also completely followed her own energy and merged with Chen Hao's physical body. Bit by bit, it approached Chen Hao's mind. It's useless. Although the power of reincarnation is mysterious and powerful, it's only useful to her own soul. This is the power that she condensed after 100 reincarnations. It has no effect on Chen Hao. Do you want to remind them? In Chen Hao's mind, the treasure-hunting sword spirit heard the old god's words and said, "Can you grow some brains? Chen Hao has never told them of our existence. You're going to remind them now." If you remind them, who would dare to take the next step? Although we're not humans, they won't care whether we're humans or not. Alright, from now on, let's enter a deep cultivation state. Otherwise, if Chen Hao knows that we're watching, he'll inevitably roar. Old God said. That's true. Chen Hao treats us as brothers, let alone them. Damn it, let's escape. What's there to be embarrassed about? In my opinion, it's nothing. It's also meaningless. You don't understand. Of course, I don't understand either. This kid's current state is very strange. Why do I feel that he's not completely in a subconscious state of self-isolation to heal himself? What do you mean? I don't know the details either. If he's in a deep self-isolation to heal himself, there should be at least some fluctuations in his soul abode. But now it's completely silent. Even I can't sense any changes. Maybe it's not time yet. He might be healing from the core of his soul abode. Alright, let's escape. Anyway, there's no big problem. Hiss hiss hiss. The mysterious power of reincarnation lasted for a full hour. Helian Wuzi's mind had already integrated into Chen Hao's mind. But no matter how she called out, Chen Hao didn't have the slightest bit of response. And her power of reincarnation couldn't even lock onto the position of his soul abode, let alone nourish Chen Hao's soul. When it reached 2 hours, Helian Wuzi, whose mind was seriously exhausted, finally chose to give up powerlessly. Needless to say, The three girls could tell from Helian Wuxi's expression that there was no progress. Xiaolian, you do it. Helian Wuxi said helplessly. Oh. Then you guys go out. Don't peek. No, I'll bring him to the cultivation room. Tantai Lian said. In the room, even if Tantai Lian set up a restriction that could prevent Xia Yuyu and Helian Wuxi from peeking, it definitely couldn't stop Chen Shui, whose soul perception was very strong. If such an embarrassing thing was seen, wouldn't it be terrible? Let's do it here. The cultivation room is very hard. He's seriously injured. We promise not to peek. Chen Shui said. Let's go, Xiao Wuyu, let's go out. As Chen Shui spoke, she didn't allow Tantai Lian to reject and pulled the two girls out. Chapter 465. After Tantai Lian closed the door, she condensed another barrier. Only then did she let out a long sigh of relief with a flushed face. They won't peek, right? After Chen Shui, Helian Wuxi and Xia Yuyu arrived at the hall, their faces were all serious. They directly sat down cross-legged with their backs facing the steering wheel in the room. No one spoke, but they were all a little nervous. Especially when they thought of what Tantai Lian might do next. A faint blush appeared on their faces. 5 minutes passed, the three still didn't say a word, but they couldn't help but carefully sense each other's aura. 10 minutes later, Xia Yuyu looked at Chen Shui, then looked at Tantai Lian, and finally couldn't help but speak first. Do you think Little Lian and Haohao's Phoenix inheritance will work? It's already been 10 minutes. I don't know if it has any effect. I'm so impatient. Aren't you worried at all? Who says we're not worried, but we can't peek, right? Helian Wuxi said, and looked at Chen Shui at the same time. After a slight pause she said, Sister Shui, did you already peek? No. Don't talk nonsense. Why would I peek? Chen Shui blushed, frowned and glared at Helian Wuxi, pretending to be angry. Then why don't you look worried at all? Helian Wuxi frowned. That's right, Sister Shui. If you want to look, then look. We won't tell Little Lian. What's the situation now? Xia Yuyu also said. The two of them were sure that Chen Shui had already peeked. It couldn't be helped. During this period of contact, the two of them already knew Chen Shui's abnormal soul perception. Even compared to Chen Hao, it wasn't the slightest bit weaker. If Chen Shui really wanted to peek, whether it was Little Lian or them, they definitely wouldn't be able to detect it. You two. I really didn't look. How am I not worried? But what's the use of being worried? Do you want to peek? I'm just a little impatient. Me too. But we don't have such strong perception. If we peek, I'm afraid it will affect Little Lian. That's not good. When Xia Yuyu and Helian Wuxi heard Chen Shui's words, they naturally wouldn't say that they wanted to peek. They only said that they were anxious. So you want to peek? I have a way to let you guys peek without Little Lian noticing. Chen Shui said. What method? The two of them hurriedly asked. My psychic mirror. I think I left it in my room. Chen Shuameng whispered in embarrassment. Ah, Sister Shui, you're so sinister. You don't want to watch anymore, do you? Hearing Xia Yuyu actually call her sinister, Chen Shui angrily glared at Xia Yuyu's pure and clear eyes. She was indeed a little embarrassed. However, she was doing this for the sake of Chen Hao. After all, her mother had placed a restriction on her body. For the time being, no matter what, she could not help Chen Hao. As for Helian Wuxi and Xia Yuyu, they shouldn't have this problem. However, Chen Shui, Helian Wuxi, and Xia Yuyu were all virgins and didn't have any experience in this area. What if the two of them didn't know what to do? She didn't have any experience to pass on. Even if she did, how could she have the nerve to pass it on? As for Tantai Lian, she was considered an expert among the four of them. She had at least experienced it once, right? Such an opportunity to observe was a great opportunity to learn. I want to watch. I want to watch. Sister Shui, when we activate it, will we be discovered by Xiaolian? She won't. I've placed a concealment restriction on the psychic mirror. Moreover, Xiaolian has already immersed herself in communicating with Chen Hao. Even if you try to sense it, she won't discover it. At most, she'll discover it afterwards. I'll contact you. Quickly connect. Xia Yuyu impatiently took out her psychic mirror. The three great beauties actually gathered together as if they were thieves. Even when Chen Shui used her perception to secretly look, her heartbeat quickened. After all, her perception could only sense the circulation of Tantai Lian's aura and roughly simulate the scene. However, it wasn't visible to the naked eye. However, the psychic mirror was different. As for Helian Wuxi and Xia Yuyu, they were even more nervous. Their eyes stared fixedly at the psychic mirror, and even held their breaths. After Helian Wuxi sent out the signal, Chen Shui's powerful divine sense directly penetrated into the room and connected to Helian Wuxi's signal request. Hiss! The psychic mirror in Helian Wuxi's hand instantly emitted rays of faint blue light. A clear image appeared in the eyes of the three people. The three great beauties all stared with their eyes wide open. They held their breaths and stared with their eyes straight. The three little faces instantly flushed red. They saw that Tantai Lian and Chen Hao were already completely naked. Tantai Lian's graceful and exquisite body was fully revealed. Her charm was fully displayed. Her entire body flickered with resplendent faint blue flames, which enveloped the completely naked Chen Hao. The two of them sat cross-legged facing each other, and slowly circled in the air. Seeing the completely naked Tantai Lian, the three girls were already extremely shy. Their heartbeats strangely accelerated to a terrifying degree. Not to mention seeing the completely naked Chen Hao. Tantai Lian's graceful and exquisite body caused them to exclaim in admiration in their hearts. At the same time, they were also secretly comparing. It had to be said that at any time, a woman's mentality of comparison existed. Especially in the aspect of beauty. It was even more so. And Chen Hao's streamlined muscles, full of masculinity and beauty, caused the three girls to stop breathing. This wasn't because the three girls were lustful, nor was it because they saw Chen Hao's body and were overflowing with lust. It was merely the attraction of yin and yang between them and the man they loved. Even though the current Chen Hao's aura was still terrifyingly weak, it didn't affect the visual impact he brought to the three girls. So ugly. When Xia Yuyu's gaze couldn't help but carefully size up Chen Hao's body from head to toe, and when it moved to a certain place, this innocent girl couldn't help but open her mouth and make a sound. What's ugly? Chen Shui and Helian Wuxi both looked at Xia Yuyu curiously. Here. Xia Yuyu actually pointed at a certain place on the psychic mirror's image, and said bluntly, It's indeed ugly. Helian Wuxi slightly frowned, her face flushed red, but she resisted laughing and said very seriously, PFFF. Chen Shui couldn't help but laugh out loud. She looked at Xia Yuyu with a speechless face and said, Yuyu, you shouldn't not know what that is, right? What? Xia Yuyu asked in astonishment. PFFF. Helian Wuxi finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. Her originally cold little face looked at Xia Yuyu with eyes full of speechlessness. Even though Chen Shui and Helian Wuxi were unmarried girls, how could they not have seen the difference between a boy and a girl in their living environment since they were young? It's just that after they grew up, they didn't see it. But Xia Yuyu was a girl favored by the heavens, and was obviously pure to the point of idiocy. This is the difference between a man and a woman. When the real yin and yang dual cultivation, it's necessary. I also don't understand too much. Let's see, Xiaolian should understand more than us. If Chen Hao was awake at this moment, and knew that a man and a woman were using his most precious thing to discuss beauty and ugliness, he would be so depressed that he would vomit 3 liters of blood. At this moment, I don't even feel a fart. I'm completely immersed in a mysterious state. How could it not be ugly? That's the Rui Jingu Bang. Right now it's just a little listless and listless. Once it displays its peerless might and peerless style, who would dare to say it's ugly? Whoever says it will be served with the Jingu Bang. In the room, Tantai Lian wholeheartedly immersed herself in the arduous task of awakening Chen Hao. She only thought that Chen Shui might be spying on her, but she could only ignore it. After all, no matter how strong her perception was, she still couldn't really see what she was doing. Chen Shui could only rely on her imagination. If she knew that her every move was being monitored by 6 big eyes, she probably wouldn't be able to enter the state at all. Unfortunately, after using an entire half an hour, Tantai Lien had activated the Phoenix Inheritance and the heavenly flames of Nirvana with limitless possibilities. Moreover, she had also raised her emotions to the point where she was almost burning with desire. However, Chunhao still didn't give her any response. This kind of thing could only be completed when both parties were on the same page. Because this wasn't a simple XXO, but a fusion of yin and yang. Without absolute passion and excitement, it was impossible to awaken Chunhao's soul, not to mention a true fusion of spirit and body. Otherwise, Tantai Lien would only need to use a little bit of her energy to make certain things display their power. After an hour, Tantai Lien finally helplessly stopped activating her mind and energy. Her essence, energy, and spirit seemed to have been burned and withered. She was extremely weak. After putting on her clothes, she helped Chunhao, who was motionless like a corpse, put on his clothes. Creak. Tantai Lien gently pushed open the door. Her face was slightly red as she peeked out. She saw 3 women sitting cross-legged with their backs facing the door. They seemed to be immersed in cultivation. "I'm done." Tantai Lien let out a slight sigh of relief and said softly. After a while, Chun Shui and the other 2 acted as if they were done cultivating. They floated to Tantai Lien's side and said, "Done? How is it?" Tantai Lien shook her head and said, "It's useless." He didn't have any reaction at all. You try it." I'd better not try. If you can't do it, then I can't either." Hearing Tantai Lien's words, Xiao Yu's face immediately turned red and she said nervously, "How would you know if you don't try?" Tantai Lien said, "Even if you try it, it definitely won't work. The ruins that Hao and I entered were only of a very low level. The cultivation method that we studied together was only of the innate realm. Now that we're all in the blessed realm, what effect can it have? It really won't work." Xiao Yu said. Yu, this has nothing to do with the realm of the cultivation method. What's important is the degree of compatibility between your souls. That's right. Why don't you go to the cultivation room? Chunhao once cultivated in the cultivation room, and there are remnants of his aura. Perhaps it will be useful? Chun Shui stared at Xiao Yu and said. At the same time, she sent a message to her. Yu, this time we promise not to peek. That should be fine, right? That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.